Oh, yeah.
No, I need every meeting possible. My husband has the gout right now and is telling he's miserable, so.
Right, we're live. Kidding. Okay, we are live. Are we unmuted? We are unmuted and we are centered on us.
So you'll have to speak up, because we
Yep.
didn't have your mic, I didn't put the mics on.
That's fine.
So,
All right, go ahead. I'll go ahead and get us started. Good evening, everyone. We are here. It's March 4th, 2025, and we are holding our first FY26 budget workshop as the town council. We have 4 councilors present. Bill Cole will be joining us shortly. He's across the street with his children at the Central School for. Thank you all for being here. We'll let you guys walk us through this. Thank you.
good evening, Madam Chair, councils. So we're here tonight to present to you the manager's budget, what we've crafted, put together. And so here's some background I want to give you. This is we're working on the 19th draft revision. We've met with every department head at least twice, if not 3, 4, 5 times, depending. What we did is when we crafted the budget, we started in late December, worked through January, mostly through right up until last week, February, for the last few days. We drafted a budget. It's a very tight budget this year. We have there's no excess built into any of the budgets. And the purpose was because we're asking for some staffing positions that we'll get to at the end of the budget that I think you're aware of, and potentially EMS. And doing so, we tried to make some one-time reductions, and I say one-time reductions because they'll only be good for this year because of the way we financed town hall. So though they're here this year, there's some major budget cuts. I thought we could do it for 1 year to help offset the increase of the budget with staffing, but we'll have to put that back next year. We can't go 2 years with that cut. The downside and what we've come to now is with no excess built into this budget. As you know, there's certainly some uncertainty going forward with the new tariffs that have taken effect from Washington, D.C. We do not have any extra built into this for those, if there are impacts 12, 13, 14 months out from today. So I want to be cautious that we've tried to be as conservative as we can with the budget. We don't have the county numbers yet. We don't have the school numbers yet. So those are out. We're waiting on those. We have had conversations with the school. They said they're going to try to hold it to 4%. But I don't want to speak for the school, nor do I want to speak for the county. I do know when I spoke to the county administrator, he had said that, theirs was going up and that he had not had the jail budget yet. And we know the jail budget's an issue. Janet, did I miss anything? Jump in.
Mm-hmm.
So as we go forward with this, I just want to make you knowledgeable of the fact that we looked realistically at the revenues and tried very strategically to cut where we thought we could cut every penny to make sure that we could get the best possible services for the community. If going forward, there are additional cuts in the budget, it will be services. There's nothing else left for us to cut. It'll have to be new projects. Several factors did change as we were coming to close of creating this. So you'll see that tonight. With that said, let's start with revenue. Then you get anything you want to add?
Yep, that's good. I'm just gonna share my screen so that people on Zoom can see it too.
We weren't going to zoom it out publicly.
It's not up for the public. Yeah,
Oh,
it's only being recorded.
okay.
The meeting is okay. Are we
Being recorded, and we will upload it.
Beautiful.
All right, so for those following along, 2 sides of our budget. There's the revenue projection budget that we have to anticipate that we try to bring in. And then there'll be the expense budget, which will be the next step we'll go through. So let's go through I'm not going to go through every line, but realistically, we went through the revenue budget, the big ones, our vehicle excise tax, the 3rd line down. and we only came up with a $55,000 increase in that. The economy, we just don't dare to go any higher. The next one is further down, tree growth reimbursement, state revenue sharing. We held those fairly low. State revenue sharing, again, because of, though it is funded at 5%, there is a bill pending in the legislature for an escalation clause that starts at 5.5%, but who knows if that'll get passed, nor do we know if that'll get funded. Also, state revenue sharing, if the revenue does not come into the state for some, whatever reason, then it gets cut back to our level. So we were cautious with that. Interest and investments, we put it up to 100, we increased it 30,000, but I think we feel a little better about it, but we wanted to be conservative. Correct?
Right now, our interest rate is 4.25, but we never know how long that's gonna hold. The one in pink is the undesignated, and that's a decision that we'll have to make. So we may have to come back to that one.
Right, so that's indicating 900,000,
Out of the undesignated
other
fund,
than designated to help fund taxes.
which is the same as we did this current year.
And for the last fiscal year, how much did we put back into undesignated for the end of the year-ish?
It was close to $1 million.
So almost even. So the rest of them are very small accounts going down. So overall, we're only increasing revenue, or we're increasing revenue 140,295. If you talked to me January 15th, I would have said that that's a very realistic number, but we hope that we'll be fairly substantially over that. If you ask me today, I'd say I hope we hit 140,000 extra revenue next year. I'm concerned, I don't know what the tariffs will do. And that's nothing, I want to make it very clear right out front that there's nothing political about the tariffs for me. The tariffs are there's something that's being implemented in Washington that we have to financially deal with here, as well as everywhere else in the country. So it's not, I don't want anybody to think that there's any political resin behind our comments. There absolutely is not, but I would be amiss to not do my job if I didn't address them. And I made 2 phone calls today. I looked at my managers in the area and we're all scratching our heads. We're trying to, so bear with us. We're doing the best we can. So I'm gonna start the next sheet should say town council. And I'm gonna flip right over that because there's a 0% increase. Well, let me go back. Was there any questions on revenue? Did anybody have any questions on revenue they needed, that they thought of? And certainly you can write them down for later as well, so.
So I mean, it seems like the story with revenue is like, this is based on the information we have today, these are conservative estimates for increase, like for revenue sharing, et cetera. So we always lean conservative with revenue.
Absolutely. We always budget conservatively on the revenues because if reality comes and we're short, then we have to find it on the expense side.
Yep.
That makes sense. Any other questions on revenue? So the next page would be town council, 110-1110. And that stays the same as 0%. The next page is the town manager's budget. There's a $2,500 increase in operating, and that was for my travel or my mileage for my car stipend and my contract. The remaining salary changes, which 23,000 mostly comes into Dawn's wages due to the changes in the GA requirements, which now say that Dawn has to be available for GA anytime town hall is open. So she never worked on Friday. She always had Friday off. She only worked 4 days. Now we bumped her up to Friday because under the new laws of GA, she's got to be available, whether it's by phone, computer, whatever it is. So we got to pay her for her services. That's the major increase in the manager's budget.
And then the cost of living came in at 2.9% for the staff across the board, except for the police union was 3.5.
Right, so what we did is we gave everybody a 3% cost of living, CPI. with the exception of law enforcement, we bumped them up. But on the other side of that, we have a merit program for the employees that is not for the law enforcement, they have a contract, which we instituted was, 50, 75, or $1 based on your evaluation, which is, this is in the code and charter to do that, so. That's what we got this year. Town clerk? You wanna do that one?
Yeah, the town clerk, we did have to do some wage adjustments, looking at surrounding towns and the good team that we have in the clerk's office now. We wanted to make sure we had some longevity with that. So that had an increase of a total for the department, 32,404. Of that, 31,829 is salary. Very small operating change of 575. We do hope to get another tabulator, so that the voting goes a little smoother.
One of the issues there was the support staff was way underpaid. And in order for us to keep people, we had to bump that up. We did do a wage evaluation around us to see where everybody was at. We just had to move them up.
So that increase for the part-time wages, that's more, I'm assuming that's more than the 3% because we're trying to level with.
That is
correct.
Okay, great.
Any questions? Clerk's office.
For the finance team, we had an increase of 4,947. Of that, 3,792 is wages. That is the regular COLA raise, and a little bit bump up for the contracted services for the audit. That one. The next one is the computer department.
Can you read off the numbers so they make sure they have the right?
Computer, 110-1150. Stellar is our IT contracted services, and they are going to have a large increase, unfortunately, so that's about $10,000 for the year. They did actually want to increase it sooner, and I was able to push them back to start that increase in July. So that is an increase of 9,457 total contracted services. The next one is administration, 110-1160. And that actually has a decrease of a little under 5,000. The biggest changes there is we did have one of the administrative assistants. It was helping with media. She still will be, but she is also now under economic development. So that is a piece of her job that moved over there with her. And we did have an increase in our insurance, which is all the buildings, all of our assets, of $4,000. Those are the two big pieces that moved that.
What's the media? Is it?
That is, we have about 8 hours a week dedicated to doing Facebook posts, social media, just to get our information out there. So we had a portion, so many hours a week in this administrative position that got moved into economic development because that is a part of her duties.
And is that clearly defined and shown when I look at the economic development?
It will be when we get to that, yes. Any other questions on that one? The next one is tax assessment, assessing office, 130-1310. And that is the COLA raises for Verna and her staff. There was actually a decrease in her contracted services. She had some mapping services done before. Total increase on the budget is $5,570. With a decrease in operating budget of 2,600 and a salary increase of just under 8,200. Enforcement.
I have just a general question, not necessarily specific for these, but I'm noticing just on many of these, like it says X% paid by TIF, which is super helpful. How does that get factored in at the end?
Once we do the warrant article that
Yeah.
allows the town council to spend TIF dollars as is allowed by our plan, then at that point in time, we will see all the line items of the economic development budget that will be funded by TIF for you guys to approve at that time. So
Okay.
that will come later in
Okay,
this whole process.
okay. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Looking on the pink lines, the top three, figures says 2669, 3412, and 2093.
Yes,
That's all salaries.
correct.
Um,
And Verna's time is 40% billable to North Berwick because we share her time.
I got you. And so I'm not as good at math as you are probably, but so when I add those up and take 40% off the 2093 and 15 off of everything, that's how we get the 5570? Or is it,
You would add up everything in the pink column, comes to $5,570, including the credit of the $3,500 in contracted services.
so that would technically be lower because the 15,
The 15% has already been taken out of the numbers you're seeing there.
okay,
Oh,
so
okay.
that's what we're,
When we get to another department with a debt, it is
Okay,
listed out separately. I have a whole nother huge spreadsheet like this of all the salaries and wages and whatnot, that I could share with you if you want.
but this number here is the real number. I'm not figuring, oh, that's gonna get lower because I'm taking 15 and 15.
This is what we're gonna need to raise and appropriate for taxes,
Thank
what
you.
you're seeing here. Yes, thank you.
Code enforcement, is that?
Yeah, it's 130, 3020 code enforcement. Do that one.
Yep, go ahead. You want me to?
Yeah, go ahead. do it.
So this one, we had a decrease in salaries because of admin position that got moved to economic development. She had a portion of her salary going here. She has moved into the economic development. So there is a plus and a minus. Code will have a part-time admin and a different line item that will be shared with fire and highway. They each will have a couple hours to help with that. So that's a shared thing. And that is her portion for code at 11 hours a week is what she will have for an admin assistant to help her 2 days a week. And then we increased the legal line by 2,000. So this department has a total increase of $1,583 with a decrease in salaries and an increase to operating by $2,080.
The decrease for the full-time line item, is that we're shifting that into the planning, or sorry, the economic development bucket, where we're splitting the salary between the two departments, or two.
We had a full-time person.
Yep.
She did social media, she did code, she did planning, she was the
Yep.
admin for different departments. So she is
Yep.
now solely belonging to planning and economic development.
Okay, so but the full-time line item is that assistant position you're talking about? Not the code enforcement officer.
Correct.
Okay.
Code enforcement officer is still gonna be full-time.
Great.
Yeah, that's not gonna change.
Thank you.
It does get confusing when we shift people
Yeah.
from different departments. Sorry about that.
All good, thank you.
130, 1330 planning.
This one in the past, we had hoped that we were gonna have an economic developer and a planner. And we ended up with our DiCarlo, who has been able to take on both hats. Therefore, we have been able to reduce this planning line as we don't need a full-time planner. We have him under the hat of TIF and economic development. He's being going to be funded by the TIF program. Therefore, we get a nice credit here of $60,072. We did increase legal services for planning in this particular budget by 5,000.
Questions?
Any questions?
Are we still using Paul Schumacher for special projects?
Mhm.
And is he in this budget?
Contracted services line.
Contract service, okay.
The next one is zoning board, 130, 1340. There's no change on that one.
The next one is 140, 1410 the fire department. Wages, part-time, line 1030 is up 42,128. That's adding an EMS coordinator. Also increasing the local firefighter wages. Chief Hamill did a wage study and found that our firefighting call force was not is paid equally across the board as for other surrounding towns, so this brings that up to there. There's also a $5,000 increase in training, to add for training, EMS certification, EMS training for that. And then there's $5,000 in new uniforms and station wear, because as we put people on duty, we'll need that. Chief Amel needs uniforms, and, in the past, one of the things that, if you remember the banquet issue, what came out of the banquet issue is that the fire department was not buying the badges and the pins and all the stuff for the firefighters' uniforms. They were getting it themselves, and that's not appropriate. We need to buy that stuff, it belongs to us, it's our certification stuff, we give them a badge, we hire them. When they retire, they give us their badge back, they give retirement. So that's that, and that increases. The big one there is salary wages, 53,000, 676, and you see that represents a 18% increase. Questions?
Did you just do that math in your head?
No, it's all on there,
At
the
the
gray
very
bucket
bottom.
in the bottom.
Where's the, oh, okay, salary, okay, I wasn't even looking at that section on the other ones. Thank you.
Okay, so increases in salary stuff is related to,
Call firefighter pay.
Yep.
And a part-time EMS administrator to do all the paperwork.
Yep.
The second part is the training, because if we're gonna jump into the EMS world, they'll need to have EMS training certifications to keep their credits, to have a license to respond. And the last one is the uniform wear. That's it.
okay, but so, sorry, the question, so for the salary line item, is all of that because of the, what am I trying to say, cost of living increase, or is there also the EMA director piece as well? I'm just-
So this is, Nick, you wanna,
I think she's asking about my salary.
Yeah, I'm just looking at like the bigger numbers, I just wanna make sure I can like explain in a sentence or two what the reason is. So is the 13,000 for the chief, and I'm not questioning the number, I just wanna understand, is that 100% because of that's not because of the per cost of living increase, that's more than that?
It's cost of living, and now because
The EMA
Dale
director.
Court left us, he is also taking on the duty of the
Great.
emergency management director.
so he got raised salary,
Got it, okay.
that's the bump up there.
And then the 42,000 for part-time is, the majority of that is an increase in wages, but then the addition of the EMS coordinator, so there's
Correct.
two pieces there. Okay,
Correct, and she's
Thank you.
working about 12 hours a week right now.
great, thank you.
Anything else on this?
It's an easy sell. We have a fire department that shows up. Shouldn't be anybody that argues that point.
The next one is 1440 water assessment, which is the fire hydrants. Okay,
They are doing a 25% increase on water across the board. And they had anticipated an increase last year. It's actually happening and being effective April 1st. So in the aspect of, we want to consider it lucky, we were able to bump it up in increments. We did some last year, and then we have some this year. The additional amount is the 44,966, and that's for our fire hydrants. The next one is 140-1430 emergency rescue. This is our ambulance service through York Ambulance. We had a 3.4% increase in their contract. Year 26. And that's an increase. We did do some in CIP last year to help increment this increase as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that doesn't seem like as much as I expected it to be for this year.
Right, we did it at 100,000 and 100,000 to help ease the pain,
Make it
if you will.
gentle.
To be gentle, yes. And then we do charge them rent for their space in the fire department, and we did an increase in their rent of the same amount as their budget. That's $15,510 that comes off the top. The next one is the historic district, 160-1660, and that one has no change. Next one is the Conservation Commission. That one again, no change. The biggest amount there is going for a subsidy for the Mount A coordinator. That amount has stayed steady. The next one is for the streetlights. CMP rates seem to be rising, so we did have to boost that up $500. But still a lot better than, if you look at the one all the way to the left, it was almost 50,000. So that was the actual cost. So, still looking good there.
That's satisfying to see that change over time.
Yes, yes. to see that go from there to 8,000. That was a good investment that we did. The next one is the food pantry. Again, no change. We just pay their sewer bill.
Go ahead.
The community building, 150-1560. This one has an increase of $2,350. We had a few things go up and down, cost of living for our custodial. The biggest increase is for electricity. We did have a find in the TIF where we were able to take 50% of the building, which is the fire side, and take 15% of their operating costs and charge that to TIF. So that's what you're seeing in red here, that we're able to take that out.
Can we just back up 1 second?
Of course.
The food pantry,
Oh, yes.
is sewer going up again this year? Did we account for that? Because depends on which rumor you want to listen to, with water going up, sewer is also going up.
I have not heard that sewer is going up at this point.
Okay.
Not been instructed.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. If you hear something different, let me know. Any questions on the community building? So that one has salary change of 888. That was the cost of living raise, and small operating increase of 1462.
The next one's 1550, which is the town hall. We reduced the repair and maintenance of the building by $30,000. Leaving only 10,000 at account because of the building renovation that's taking place. I'm hoping that most of that will be picked up there. And then we have a savings in the heating oil because of the new boilers. But we're gonna have another savings because we just found out that we're way overpaying on our oil, and we're going to a new oil company. So we anticipate more savings there. So that's actually down 27%. So understand on that building repair and maintenance, that'll probably stay that way for the next budget, but after that, we'll start creeping in increments as the building continues to need other things. And I say creeping at like 12, then to eventually 15. But for right now, we use it as cost savings, so this is down by a $28,000 decrease. Any questions on town hall?
You're just saying that we're bringing that down because of the renovation, but then after in future years, we'll start to like tick that back up, start to build up.
Small
Slowly,
increments.
So we have.
The stuff to
something
maintain,
aside for
because, so
repair.
remember, we're in the reason we're here, right, with a $7.3 million renovation, is because we, in the
Didn't-
past, they didn't do a good job maintaining it, so we just gotta go back, make sure there'll always be money there to maintain it.
We always need boiler maintenance and elevator maintenance on an annual list, annual things that have to happen.
Questions on the town hall?
The next one is public parks, fields and monuments, 150-1520. And that one has an increase of just over $1,200. Cost of living raise for the gentleman who takes care of all the lawns in the fields. And small bump up on electricity.
Questions? Thoughts?
Questions on that?
No bump up on. Yeah, never mind, you got it. Forget, why would I ask?
Ask away, John.
No, it's there, I just have to read.
I know you didn't get these ahead of time, so I completely understand. That's
All good.
The next one is the town garage, 150-1530. That one has an increase of $4,300. Biggest increase there is water, 25% increase. The history of water is going up a little bit as well. And we added $1,000 just because the town garage does need a little bit of maintenance.
I'm sorry, can we actually go back to the public parks?
Of course,
And this is just with talking about the water going up. Those fields, like with the whole irrigation of the fields, would there be an increase in that for water usage, or is
We
it
did,
just
we bumped
minimal?
it up.
well, it really depends on Mother Nature,
Okay,
right? Because we've had years where we've had droughts and they told us we can't water.
okay,
We've had years where it was drowning on its own. There was one year, we kind of had a drought and they didn't say you didn't have to shut off the water, and that's the $7,600 year you see.
okay.
So it really does depend on.
If Mother Nature
Sure.
coordinates with us. or not.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Town garage, that one, is $4,300 increase in water and $1,000 for building maintenance.
When we say the town garage, where is this is referring to
Highway, town garage on
all
all
of the
front street.
facilities down at the
At
at the garage, essentially, okay.
Yes,
Okay, do we have a CIP account for the town garage anywhere?
we have a CIP account for all municipal buildings
Building.
under one umbrella.
Okay. The only reason I'm bringing this up, and I recognize this, it may not make sense for us to try to do anything this year, but when I joined the public works.
We're already on it. I got you covered, Madam Chair.
Can I at least fill the room
Go ahead.
in? When I joined the public works crew a couple weeks ago, plowing, I hadn't ever been in the garage before. I don't know if you guys have been in there, but, I mean, it leaves little to be desired. I feel like it would be nice for us to work toward a place where we could make some improvements there for those guys, maybe a minimum add a second bathroom, maybe a shower or something. So that's just a thought for future. I know you guys are, whatever, you could share with us when we get there, but
Yeah.
Give them us a cookie, it's gonna want a glass of milk.
So just so you know, back to some of the stuff you talked, we're building some of that into the CIP.
great.
We're getting prices now, trying to decide what would be the best option to present to you. But there is, we're anticipating something.
Mhm.
Any other questions of the town garage?
Next one is 140, 1450, police department. Biggest increase there is increase in wages. If we don't continue to, this year in their contract's 3.5% raise. We are struggling the same way every other law enforcement agency is in York County. We're trying to beat the next guy, try to keep our staffing full. We are full right now. Our last two positions were filled by Sanford police officers because we were able to negotiate them to come over here. So this includes 10 full-time union officers, 1 full-time admin and chief is asking for a new crisis support position. Where Aaron left, he's asking for a full-time crisis position. And he'll be here on Thursday night to discuss that and tell you about that. The other increases are, the major ones are the 5,300 in contracted services. For some of his software, for all the training videos, the recorder calls, the security system, and so forth and so on. Then on the next page is the big increase here is $7,500 for ammo training and target practice. They did not have a line for this previously, but they need to show that separately. We need to, because that's a recurring cost annually and expense. And the ammo is for training and target practicing. Every police officer has to certify every year shooting. So this is, their increase is $137,855, and it's a 10.3% increase. Most of it is salaries at $120,000, $17,000 operating changes. Questions?
For the line at the 7,500 for ammo training and target practice, was that embedded in a different line item previously, or is that net new?
That's a new line, but it was, they were
It was
taking it
still
out of,
money we were spending before.
In
Right.
training.
they were taking it out of
Got it.
training.
Okay, thank you. And so the big wage increase is the 3.5% for 10 full-time officers, in addition to the full-time admin and crisis support. Correct.
So there's an increase in his training, even though we took that 7,500 out, there's an increase in his training. Because he's sending all his supervisors to the FBI Academy Leadership School. As well as he still has to pay for if we send someone to the regular academy. And there are other trainings that they have to put on. So that went up. Because we had 2 new offices here. Any questions on PD?
Is is the admin and crisis support position one position, or is it,
Two separate,
it's, okay.
two separate.
And I know, Chief River will be here on Thursday, but our crisis support was a grant before, and there's not a grant available anymore.
Well, no, see, that's what happened. So now Wells is in a grant program waiting for one ahead of us. And then we would be up next to be replaced, so we're not gonna see one because they can't find one. They can't find someone to replace Aaron,
Right,
but if they can, it's going to Wells next. And then if they could find someone else after that, it would come here, but,
And it was through Sweetster. She was on there.
right.
Okay, so I budget the question, the full-time admin, if we talk about that position, that's. We're adding hours for that existing, or sorry, we're increasing the wages for the full-time admin. Or is that a net new position?
It's
No.
just the cost of living. for
Cost
that.
of living,
No, it's just, right, it's just saying what's in it. The police union negotiations, 10 full-time officers, 1 full-time admin, which is Wendy, who sits out front and answers the radio in the phone daytime, and adding a crisis support position.
okay, so we're applying the 3.5% for the officers, the cost of living increase for the admin, and then the net new full-time
Correct.
crisis support position.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I think for like things like that, it might be helpful for us to see the breakdown of that number a little bit, just especially for like the bigger line items, I think, just in terms of telling the story to the public.
I will add more detail on that. Thank you. Any other questions on police before we move on? The next one is dispatch, 140-1470. And that is our dispatch services through the town of, city of Sanford. And that goes by CPIW, which was a 2.8% increase. And that's what we're seeing, $7,717 is because of that contract.
Currently, as we speak, the fire chief and police chief are exploring other opportunities, but we're very limited because radio communications can only go so far as to how we can get dispatched, where the 911 calls are routed to and how they're sent out. But we do have several options, and Chief Ruger and Chief Ham are looking into them. Hopefully, maybe next year we'll have better options.
Can you explain a little bit for my better understanding, the comment, we don't charge Berwick for using their tower, they don't charge us for using their tower?
It's a note I had put in there a couple years ago, just so that I know that we're not charging each other. And I don't need to look for that cost.
So they have one, we're pinging off theirs, they're pinging off ours, I gotcha.
Sure, yeah, they're interconnected, so it's kind of a mutual.
Okay.
The next one is employee benefits, 120-1210. This is all the payroll taxes and benefits. As we know, when we raise people's salaries, the taxes will go up as well. So the FICA tax went up 28.5. The main PERS went up 32,000. The new paid family medical leave act, which is 1% of everyone's salaries except for the council, is 42,200 for a total increase of 94,500, 9%. Few things went down, but those are the big items that are taking it up.
For the paid family medical leave act, I know. When did this take effect? Like, cause we kind of worked some magic, I guess, to kind of get us through up until this budget that we're working on, right?
January 1st, it was implemented.
Yep.
And there is the option of 0.5% to be charged to the employees, or the employer can take on the whole 1%.
And we took on the whole 1%.
We took on the whole 1%.
Okay.
150, 1510, the highway department. The big increase there, obviously, to wages, and the seasonal help part-time, wages increased to 3%, was a $28,000 increase. The next major increase going down is the crosswalk striping or the road striping, contracted services road striping. $9,000 increase, and that's an increase because of the yellow crosswalks that we painted. Those,
Fancy crosswalks. I love that, whoever added that, thank you.
It's wild.
and you know, so we're trying right now to look. Carlo has applied for a grant to get those striped, but it's through DOT, and that's through supplemental federal funding. Repair, maintenance of vehicles and repair, maintenance and equipment, we deleted one. And we're on, so if you go through your packet.
We're like halfway through this stack.
Okay.
At the
we're on
highway
account
department.
1510 highway department, so.
Thank you. Is there an interruption?
No
Oh,
worries.
good.
How was the concert?
It's awesome. Very good.
It's not necessarily numeric order.
Oh, okay.
Like,
Yeah, it's like halfway through the stack-ish. We just look for highways.
Yeah, right.
How many times you gone to this, Jeff?
had a penny for every 10.
So, on this one, you see an increase of in the pink line, you'll see that increase of $9,000. That's for mostly for crosswalk striping increase there, street sweeping, contracted services going down. Repair maintenance vehicles, we just did a line item adjustment in that budget. We took 45,000 out of one line and put it back into the next line where it kind of belonged. On page 2 of that line. Vehicle diesel fuel, is up 7,000. Because of the increased cost, even though we bid it out, we do bid that out. The next big one is line 6550 salt de-icer. Even with the winter we had this year, we had a carryover, but we were at the maximum amount. So we won't have any carryover this year, so we're raising that, we have to raise that up 50,000.
And so just what you mean by that is that because for this current year, because we've had a rough winter, we've used up all of the funds that we usually spend, or that we allocated last year for salt. And so there's nothing left, whereas in the past, if there had been something left, we can carry that forward.
Correct.
Right now, we're at $4,000 left.
Did we end up going up to the state shed and getting any salt at all? Because they told us we could for 236.
I don't believe we did.
If we did, we had to pay it back.
Right, I understand, we weren't getting it for free, but that, the state said, oh, come get it from us. Yeah. That was a good deal.
Is this the first year? This is the first year in a while we haven't had a significant carryover.
First year we've had
Since-
236.
Yes, and this is, when we had a couple light winters, the winters before,
Exactly.
and this one, we've had quite a few back-to-back storms.
Yeah.
This is the first year I have not seen a carryover for the salt.
Wow.
Yep.
So 6570. That's up $1,000 culverts for small road projects. And a higher price on metal, so I wanna tell you, did Jay buy his culverts today,
Yes, he did.
and how much did he spend?
$54,000 on the culvert.
54, 56, but
56.
56, so
55,000.
Jay called the culvert company, cause we have a major culvert on. Emery's Bridge, yeah, it needs to be done, so we
Yeah.
need that culvert. That culvert, so Jay called them the other day and said, hey, I don't need it till warm weather. But is the tariff gonna take an effect on this? And they said, yes, they said effective
Today,
today, it's going up 25%. So they sold us the culvert at 56,000, which is what they quoted us on. And it was gonna go up another, whatever that was, 15,000 or
whatever, 25%.
25%. It was gonna go up, so we bought that, Jay had to buy that today.
So we got it just in time.
Yes.
Yeah. So then the only other increase there is their uniforms. We tried to save some money last year, so they get uniforms. One of the big issues, we've had issues with OSHA, we didn't want employees taking grubby clothes home with oil and contaminating their residents, so couple of years ago, we went to a uniform service where they have 10 shirts, 11 pairs of pants, jackets, so forth. It's from UniFirst. And they just throw the dirty clothes in the basket and they take them and launder them, bring them back. We rent the clothes and pay for the laundering and everything. So last year, we tried to save some money by doing away with the shirts and buying them their own shirts, but then it didn't work out, so we gotta add that back in to go to. So with that, it's $108,625 increase, which represents 8.46%, 67,650 is an operating changes, mostly because of the solid liquid de-icer increase. And then there's $40,000 in salaries. Questions on public works? Next one is 150-1540 is the transfer station. First increase shows increase in the full-time position for the supervisor, and then just the 3% wage adjustment for the employee staff. And actually, did we adjust those a little bit as well?
Yes, we did. We did give them some wage
Yeah,
adjustments
they
as
need
well.
some wage adjustment. The next two going down is this disposal tipping and disposal hauling, and that's, we increased them 10,000. So on disposal tipping, I think we were okay, but I don't know for sure. First year hauling to Eagle Main, so we added a $10,000 buffer in there. I think we're fine doing, based on what we hauled last year in 12 months, what we're doing. Hauling fees represents the new contract, and again, the same thing. We're at 125,000. I think we're okay, but I don't dare to cut it that close. So it doesn't, the number, that's the only place in this whole budget where we put a little cushion in, because I'm not sure where it's all brand new hauling and brand new tipping fees. So I just don't want to be way under. And it's strictly projection by the amount of tonnage, the amount of hauling that we have had in the last year. So it's strictly a board projection. I can't give you any specifics other than we took the total year tonnage, the tipping fees, times that out, times the rate, and then added some in. So this is extra. I think we're okay. I think we're gonna be okay under the amounts that were there. But me and Jen wrestled with this for several days and decided to kind of put a little buffer in there.
So that is so we're building a buffer in on like wiggle room because of kind of the uncertain, the unknown of like we're stepping into now doing things differently than we've done it before. So this time next year, we should have more information.
Correct.
To make a more like, not that I'm uncomfortable with this, but to just make a more like educated guess.
Well, right, instead of, well, and that's what I'd say, we're doing an educated guess this year.
Mhm.
Next year, we'll have more detailed information, make a more accurate budget number work.
Great.
I don't have that being first year with all new hauls. There's gonna be some adjustments, we're changing the whole service, going to single stream recycling. So there's gonna be we could have forgot something somewhere in here. I don't know, I hope not, but you know, so we added that in just to be safe.
Oh, okay. I was gonna ask, where does our annual fee for our payment for the Eco Main?
Page 2.
Yep.
And then, yeah, on page 2 shows you. Small equipment tool uniforms. Annual fee for the principal for Eagle Main for the payment. So that is a $75,000 increase, which represents 15.38. So the annual payment bill, what that is, we had, well, you were here when we did that, correct?
Yep.
So you know what that is, I couldn't remember if you were here. So that's our, kind of our payment.
Is our annual fee only $12,000 or?
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know why I thought it was like 30.
No, it's $12,000 for 30 years. It's a bargain. Any questions on the transfer station, recycling program? And again, so one of the issues that's a challenge here is recycling costs always shift. Diesel fuel costs go up and down, so we're trying to hit a moving time.
Next is the Recreation Department, 160-1620. The cost of living is in here, as well as the biggest change here is Nikki is asking for a part-time 28 hours per week additional coordinator to help her with programs. She wants to do more programs. She will be here on Thursday to speak to exactly that job description and what kind of help she would have, more building coverage and more programs, after-school programs. And she'll speak more to that. And that is the biggest change in the Recreation Department. The next one is our library, and that is 160-1610. And that has an increase of $32,264. There were wage adjustments needed here as well. We've looked at surrounding towns and comparisons for the library director and the staff, and we did increase that. The only other change is the counter staff at the library. We increased his hours, 3 hours a week. It was helpful for him coming in extra. There was an increase of 2,000 for contracted services. The mechanical services for the geothermal system is 3,000 a year. We signed that contract. The other one is $2,000 for publications. The friends of the library were paying for the DVDs, and that will now fall back onto the town. So that's where the additional 2,000 is for. DVDs that we can rent. Questions in the library? The next one is general assistance. And this one is staying flat with no change. We just did a little bit of shifting where we do need to have a backup if Dawn is not here. She's on vacation. We need to make sure someone else is trained. So there'll be some additional training and some salaries put for that. Billy in clerk's office has stepped up and wanted to be the backup for her.
Right.
So, the next one is our social contributions, donations. That one is completely flat, no changes there. The next one is the debt. I did put in red here where we are able to take some TIF dollars to put towards these debts. And DeCarlo and I were looking at this because the library is in the TIF district. We are able to take 10% from TIF dollars to put towards these bond payments. You'll see the two that are highlighted in green, the library construction and one of the highway trucks are going to be paid off. Fiscal year 26 will be the last year we have those two. And then on the second page, you'll see is our biggest change with the town hall renovation. This coming fiscal year, we will only have an interest only payment. So that payment is going to be lower on the first year. Because of the amendment we made to the TIF, we are able to take 50% of that payment and pay that with TIF dollars. So the general fund will only have to pay $122,500 for the first year.
Okay.
So that does have an increase of a total of $98,885 or 10%.
Okay, can I
Of
just
course.
want to orient myself to this. So if we go to the library, the first one. So our principal and interest payment for the library is $35,980. And we can take basically $3,600 of that from TIF. So the only money that we need to appropriate is the
difference.
35,000 less the 3,600-ish.
Correct.
Okay,
So the
okay, so
grand
all of
total
the TIF, similar to everything else, all of the TIF math is excluded, or has already been applied, I guess.
is in here. So
Okay.
the grand total of our debt is the $1,033,612. That is with the discounts. When I say discounts, it's being taken by another funding source by the TIF.
Got it, okay.
So we were able to decrease it a little bit, but we increased it with the town hall. So net effect $98,885 increase.
One thing
including-
that might be helpful, and if they already have this, just tell me about it, but like, I think because the TIF is coming into play so much this year more than it has in the past, like, I think being able to kind of have another kind of visual of like, here's how much money we're planning on pulling from TIF for this year and like, you know, and this piece is going to that and to that. Does that make sense?
A
Like,
summary,
yeah, just like we're pulling X amount of money from TIF and those funds are gonna go to pay all of these things, just like as a separate kind of piece to the story. Once we get everything finalized, obviously, I don't think we need that necessarily for the decisions. I'm talking about more for like budget meeting stuff.
absolutely. Any other
Like-
questions on the debt?
No, I'm good.
The next one is CIP.
Okay, so this is gonna be, yeah, it's just your CIP, what line? The first, so what we did is we went down through this line. And this is where I made 1-year cuts that we'll only be able to do 1 year. So compensated absences, which is used as contingency fund for retirement payouts and annual retirement health savings accounts. I cut what's going into there, we cut that 30,000. You wanna do the fire truck one?
For the fire equipment, that was increased 30,000. There is a stapled packet behind the summary, and that gives you all the detail on each of these.
Looks like this,
I'll pull the balance on things.
yeah, that's the balances.
So
Yep.
it shows how we plan to spend those CIP dollars.
So that's the detail for that.
And the increase in fire was because of the multi-band portable radios that maybe Nick can speak to a little bit more.
Sure,
detail.
so this has kind of been a critical need for a few years now, and I've been kicking the can on it. But, we've kind of reached the point where we can't defer this any longer, where we really need to have. We have communications issues when we're not in South Berwick, and it's because of the different radio systems that are used by our neighbors. And the old way of thinking was, well, it's not really our problem, and I still tend to agree with that. But at the end of the day, it's a safety issue, and safety issues are my problem, so, this would alleviate that, at least the beginning to alleviate it, to get them kind of strategically placed in the fleet, so that, you know, we have communication.
So who are the radios for and what do the radios do?
So basically, that's how we communicate on fire scenes. So-
Right. But these radios will be for your officers.
So yeah, we're gonna start issuing them to the officers first, and we'll kind of distribute them out as we go.
Do you have yours with you? You have yours with you?
I don't.
Sorry, I missed what line item are we talking about with the radios?
1950 fire equipment.
Thank you, okay.
And so these radios are multi-band because different fire departments multi-band frequency. Some fire departments are on 400 band, our fire departments are on 154 band, correct?
Correct, yeah.
So when Nick goes, they don't have, when they respond to Kennybunk,
North Berwick,
North
Sanford, Gunkwit, Wells, I mean,
They-
our
we-
direct neighbors.
we don't have any way to communicate. That's the danger in the fire.
Which is a problem when we show up first.
Which
Yeah.
happens on occasion,
Regular basis, some areas.
perhaps.
So this is a critical need for them. Then going down through the list. Highway equipment.
Transfer station had a big cut.
Transfer station, we cut that 67,000. Just because we have enough in there right now, again, we will need to put some back in next year, may not be 67,000, but I cut it this year. Hoping that I got enough that will be, with the transition will be okay. Highway equipment, we had a $21,000 reduction because of the TIF. We cut. Want to do the assessing one, Jen?
Assessing, this is the last and final payment of the 3-year reevaluation payments. So this is the last one for that. Next year, we will see a decrease for that. And TIF has been paying 10% of that revaluation contract.
Tim, quick question on the transfer station. When you say hopefully we'll be okay, are we whistling past the graveyard with that, or we're in a good spot and this is something that we can afford not to in there?
When we have so this is money that we've historically been setting aside to make improvements. And so last year we put in, what, $80,000? in the transfer station fund. That's still there.
Bought it back though.
Well, yeah,
Bought
whatever.
back a lot of
yeah.
that, right?
There's some left. I'm not sure how much.
Yeah,
Um,
so. Halfway in between, how's that?
Sure, okay.
We're not, you know, it's hard to read, at this point, we need some money for paving, but again, I'm doing this because, so you weren't here in the beginning, what I told the council in the beginning is we made some significant cuts in capital improvement because we know we have to fund some other areas with staffing positions and so forth, so these are one-time only cuts that we can make this year, that I thought we could make this year to help lessen the blow on the other end.
Okay, and I had to, Jen gave me some education yesterday on that too, so I'm a little bit more familiar than, having not seen it, but I was just wondering, just curious about that one.
I'm hoping we'll be okay. You know, we, put it this way, we've talked through all the problems and all the potential solutions on how we feel we best could achieve them. And this number sits okay with that, so.
I mean, like, that's what you guys have estimated for the balance for the town building is 240,000, but that's all town buildings. That's not just.
So that's where your highway garage comes in.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's all town buildings, you're correct, Madam
Yeah.
Chair, all town buildings. And again, I would not do this on a regular year, but we're in a different spot right now. We're faced with some unique challenges for our community. So as you see town buildings, we cut 65,000.
So for town buildings, we cut 65,000, but we should have about 240,000 there here, like at the end of this fiscal year. For the transfer station, though. So let me check it. For the transfer station, we're cutting a bunch this year, and then our estimated balance at the end of this fiscal year is only about 67,000. So like, we have some wiggle room if there's something that needs to be taken care of, but depending on how big it is.
Correct. And again, if, so back to Council Costello's statement at the beginning, she was asking about capital assets and undesignated fund budgets. So let's do a hypothetical here. So we got 67,000, the building, the gray building with a dumpster, with a compactor that burns down. It's insured, probably not for, you know, for the value we'd have to build it today with all the tariffs and everything, we wouldn't build it. So we've got to build that building back. CIP equipment, that's not included in CIP equipment, so that we'd have to go ask the people to let us use that money out of the undesignated fund to build that capital asset back. Then to maintain it would be the money in the capital account years as we went forward. Further from that, we've got well, office equipment, so we've got in there, no. And then recreations, field and facilities, put 5,000 in. And there won't be, obviously, there's not 15,000 going in for the code thing, that's a one-time payment. So with that said, there's a decrease of 167,175, which is a 20% decrease. And again, those numbers are one time, 1 year. That's the lowest I did to go on those accounts. And
Cut, where we can go.
Any other questions on the CIP? It's a lot of information in there.
So we're strategically proposing some big cuts from CIP this year to kind of find some room, I guess. And I know we can't predict the future, but like, what happens if next year there's things that we don't know about today that are gonna be big increases? Does that then set us up to just continue down this path of not putting money in these accounts? I know we can't answer that, but.
well, I
just
mean,
wanted to bring it
the
up.
hypothetical, right, is one of two things, if we find ourselves in that position next year, is then do we increase taxes to pay for those items, or do we cut services to you know, to offset that one way or the other. And that's the tough part about being a municipally elected official is, you know, I've done all I can at my level. So from here, I don't know that. I would tell you, we've been on a good track, right? We've been able to replace backhoes, we've been able to, you know, replace things that we needed through the CIP accounts, how they've come up, you folks have all done great with that. Because we had a continued funding stream going in. If we alter that more than 1 year, then what you're gonna end up doing is, when that need arises, having a special town meeting and asking them to take it out of undesignated fund. Then the taxpayers get grumpy and ugly, because now you're attacking the rainy day fund all the time. So, the purpose of CIP is to build up that account so that we anticipate replacing fire trucks, backhoes, police cars, you know, dumpster, or compactors, things that get old. And that's what, so we keep the budget steady, not big spikes and increases in spending.
And you propose these cuts to CIP kind of as a way to prevent us from having to raise taxes significantly this year, or from cutting services given those, like,
As opposed to trying to balance as best I can the tax increase this year because of where, you know, I mean, there's no secret that I've talked to you that we're proposing staffing an EMS division of the fire department, which is a significant increase in the budget. And that'll be coming up shortly in Chief Hamill's presentation. In order to help accomplish that, I've tried to reduce one time where I think we could do that. If we weren't doing that, I would have probably given these reductions. But you know, critical theory thinking, we've got to take people to the hospital. We're gonna have a way when they call 911 to take care of people. Bond lease payments.
This is just giving you a picture of when bonds and leases will start to fall off. What you see in red is the town hall renovation. The net change below does not include the change, so that you can see,
It says bond and lease payments right on the top.
yeah, it should be the next page. I wanted to show that, you know, by fiscal 27, we'll have been reduced by about $150,000 from fiscal year 26 and 27. We'll have bonds fall off, which will help replace the new payment of the town hall bond payment. And we also have TIF dollars to pay the other half of the town hall renovation. I just wanted to give you that picture.
so you said the town hall, the red numbers are not included in the totals?
Not in the where there's the decreases, so that you can see what's falling off. I didn't want to skew that. I wanted you to be able to see what's coming off without adding in the town hall.
Got it, but is the town hall included in the total due? Like for this year, the 1.1 million?
No.
Okay, so the red is just not included in it.
Correct.
Okay.
Questions about bond and lease payments. So one of the things that happens with this, even though the town hall is in there, we gotta figure, we'll factor that in. But these numbers begin to drop off, so go back to the CIP accounts for funding, right? This should help us, in reality, fund those CIP accounts back over the next coming years to help balance it out, if that makes sense. Any questions on bond and lease payment? Okay, this page is the big page. So now comes a snapshot of the budget. If you look at expense report FY26, and you see draft 19, and you run out down those numbers, you see in blue in the bottom, you'll see that there's an increase in the budget of $636,425 in the expense budget. Things go up to the top on the right-hand side, it says items reduced. These are the items that were requested or asked of in the budget that we cut. 2 electronic fingerprint machines for $19,000 for the police department, CIP constated absences, 30,000. 15 from the highway, for transfer station, 5,000 from CIP highway, 5,000 from CIP police department. 35,000 from CIP town buildings, 5,000 from CIP office equipment, 10,000 from CIP recreation equipment, 4,000 CIP pedestrian safety, 5,000 police department overtime, 5,000 part-time staff wages, 105,000 admin communications director with benefit, and what that was, I was asking for a public information officer for the town that would put information out daily. With transparency, that's becoming a big thing. We did town managers in York County did an assessment over this past year of what we thought we needed the most. And that came bubbling up to the surface. So far, 9 towns have done it in York County. We have not. And it's a person who just sits there all day long and feeds out information to the public. And provides, it's transparency and print stories and get stuff out, communicate to the public. That is a huge benefit, because when you come to me and say, how come, we can't contact, we can't answer the South Berwick reporter this week, or we didn't, I don't have staff, I have someone part-time 8 hours. And we get emails, and we get phone calls, and we get this, and we get that, and we get Facebook, and this and that. I don't have anybody, so we put in for that position, but we reduced that position. And then the chief had put in another police officer with benefits, but reduced that for the psychologist, or the psychologist. The ones that had increases that we had, so that amounted to $395,000 reduction in the budget that we didn't add in, nobody took up.
Just real quick, the communications director and the police officer, those are whole positions that we decided to cut from the budget, not just like a reduction. That's.
No, those were newly added positions that had been in the initial request of the budget. That were in the 19 rounds we cut, like myself and Jen. So the total that we reduced it by is $395,000. Items that we had no control over the increase, Jen, you wanna go over those?
Sure, our IT consultant, Stellar, $10,000. Water hydrants, just shy of $45,000. Family Medical Leave Act, $40,000. Dispatch contract with Sanford, just over $7,000. Building vehicle insurance was $4,000. Ambulance contract, just shy of $100,000. And then the town hall renovation, which with the TIF covering 50% is $122,500, for a grand total of an increase of $328,323.
That we had no control over. Any questions on that? Very plain to see what we can't control.
I prefer to see either that town hall payment in the public. I would prefer to see that either put out of, that was something we had control over. We took action on that last week. We took control over that, so the town council could have not done that. So that is a good thing that the town council, so I would like to see that as we did have control over that, or either take that out, or just put what.
You could
You know what I mean?
already predetermined or pre-decided for the.
Sure, I mean, you understand what I'm saying, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think we need to make sure that like at the budget meeting and stuff, when we present this, that it's just like clearly understood that like the bond payment was this. And then we did a thing to make it way less.
Exactly.
right.
Yes.
So when we said items we had no control, because the taxpayers voted to approve that loan, which means we have an obligation to pay that loan. That's why it shows up here.
Okay,
But we can also make that note somewhere else. We can change that. That's not a problem.
yeah, it's just a tiny win, I think, that we could take.
Yeah.
We can, as a.
Make it more of a positive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
no problem. But you understand why we put it there.
sure.
Because it was,
It has to be there, because you, the town manager, had no control over that payment.
right, we have.
So
to pay
it needs to be there for us. The positive side can be presented to the public, but you had no control over that. You have to pay that bill, period.
You wanna quickly go over the undesignated fund balance minimum per policy?
Absolutely. So the policy that we have in place is we need to keep 1 month of the municipal budget plus 10% of the municipal budget, including the school obligation. And then the school for 1 month currently is will be projecting 843,000 per month, and the county tax projected will be 37,000 per month for a minimum policy of $3,857,840.
So Council Costello, that kind of answers your question as to what those accounts were. This is what we have to keep by statute and policy. for that. You wanna do the second part, Jenny, and designated balance currently?
Yes, so the current balance in there is just over 8 million. We do know of things that we already have decided we're gonna take out of undesignated. 1.3 million for the town hall renovation, 200,000 for Great Works Land Trust for the Salmon Falls project. And I put it in pink, the 900,000, which is the same as the current year for help with the tax burden. And then I projected an estimate of 700,000 going back in when we close out the current year, fiscal year 25. Leaving a balance, estimated balance of 6,445,700 after we pay those additional items out of undesignated, leaving us a little over, just under 2.6 million above the policy of what we have to keep in there.
Questions on the undesignated?
The 700,000 that you've estimated to put back in, I feel like at least the last many years, we've estimated, kind of at this point, I had done that estimate, and then when it actually comes down to it, what we put back has been more.
I hope that's the case.
And okay, we're still hopeful.
Conservative.
Trend, okay.
We're trying to be conservative.
Great.
I don't wanna, so here's, I've seen a lot of towns say, okay, we're putting back $1 million, and then when we only hit 400,000 next year, now we're forced, because we use that as a budget number, we're forced to try to find 600,000 to cover our deposit. And that's a bad place to be, so I'd rather be conservative.
It's worked this way perfectly for the time I've been here, let's just stay with it, it's not good.
And expenses, possibly going up from now until the end of June. We don't know exactly what that's gonna look like yet.
I'm not buying a car here, so I'm not giving it again.
Good.
Okay, so what does this look like in reality? Turn to the next page, and here's your budget summary options. So if we do in the very first box up top, 513,000 an increase, less the increased revenue, we apply the revenue back. Amount that we'd have to raise from taxpayers, 373,360. That would amount to a 3.71 increase using $900,000 from the undesignated. That would be, our budget increase would be 3.71%. But you then have to add in the 122,000 for the building payment for the town hall, which brings it to a 4.92% increase for the town hall renovation bond payment. So you're looking at, the total number is 4.92, but you remember, we've got to put that 122 back in there, that payment. That half of it's paid for by TIP. So the actual expenditure increased budget would be, if we use 900,000, would be 3.71% increase. If you use 900,000 from the undesignated, but then the reality is we have to pay that 122, so it comes to 4.92.
Okay, so sorry, the top section, the first 3.7, like, that's just moot, because we have to make this town hall payment, right? So like,
But it is, but it's not, because I have to show you. So this is the actual 3.71% is your increase in your expenditure budget.
Yep.
So I gotta show you that. And then the actual increase with the bond payment that we have to add in comes to 4.92.
okay,
So I have to show you those two. That's using 900,000 from your undesignated.
okay,
There's option one. Option two, down below, is if you used $1 million from the undesignated to offset taxes, that would equate to a 2.71 increase in your expenditure budget. And then when you add back the 122 for the town hall payment, it would amount to a 3.93 increase for the town hall renovation bond payment. So that's what your budget projection looks like. Questions, thoughts, ideas?
where's all the EMS stuff in this?
That's coming up.
Coming, don't. It's coming. I have to get this to you first so we can get
Set
this
the
level. So I'd like to go through Council Cole, any questions that we can answer for you?
What's the big impact in the 900,000 versus the 2 million?
Well, 3.71 versus 2.7.
Well, yeah, but like with the,
Selling it to the public, $1 million is tough, 900,000, no one thinks tonight. When you, in that room, when there's 30 people, a lot easier to sell me $100,000 than it is a million. Can't tell you what, tell me
And
100.
that's 900,000 coming out of the undesignated fund.
Yeah.
And we've got an extra
2.6.
2.6.
I mean, I feel like people are generally like for us to use. Like, I've never in my experience had experienced any resistance anybody, from anybody to say, we have this essentially from the residents' perspective, we have this rainy day fund with all this money in it, why aren't we using it to help them? And so we've had this kind of history of pulling a decent chunk out of there. We kind of played around with the numbers over the last few years. I think did we ever take it to 1 million? I feel like
No, we voted,
So-
we stayed last
we like
year.
stayed like right under it, but I
Under 1 million.
guess what I'm trying to say is like, I think like staying under 1 million is more comfortable, but I don't necessarily think that we would get pushed back if we were
So
to
people
pull more
bought
out.
more at 900,000 versus 1 million over the actual increase.
Council James,
No, it's not 900,000.
Yeah, 999,000.
That's why we still have pennies.
Jen gave me a real good rundown on all this stuff yesterday. And thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Help keep me excuse me. Good.
We're lucky in that department.
Are those Russian tea cakes?
They are lemon, oh yeah, here passes around lemon, just lemon sprinkles cookies.
We have not had one yet.
That's my
Sorry.
only question.
Yeah.
I'm all good.
And here's
It's
the
like a napkin
napkins.
to follow.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Council James, any questions or anything I can answer?
I am 4-0, sir. I'm perfect as always. Nice work.
Very easy.
Council Minahan, any questions that I can answer for you, or we can answer?
At the risk of being the unpopular one, I'd like to see, I'd like to see a breakout of to understand what the town taxpayers are actually spending on wage increases over and above the regular 2.9 increase. The cost of living increase, I think is something that we should be doing personally. When did I get elected? 4 years ago, when in your first year. The year before that, with Terry, the town council at that time did a massive dump of money into the town employees. And I believe every year since then, we've been playing this game of other towns around us don't pay enough. And I believe that we need to have good paid employees. I just think that to ask our taxpayers, we just reassess them. So their assessed value is higher, and we're doing a 3.171% increase on top of that. I'm very concerned about, more importantly, our older people that are on fixed incomes, what that's going to do to them. And we need to look at every option to lower that, even if it is by 0.5%. So I'd be very interested to know what that extra piece is, so we can say, because I've said it to Melissa, as we've talked last year, we find all these little pennies. And it's like, what the hell for? You know, why it's not gonna impact anything. But I think that it's worth asking the question.
So the wage adjustments is what you're asking for, right? The above and beyond.
Yes, so that would include wage adjustments, not including the 2.9%.
Yep.
For everybody. And that 94,000 number would decrease because of the amount of wages that we pay. We're paying 94,000 extra or something like that, right? That would decrease also.
42,000 of it is the paid Administrative Leave Act, which is a new law that we have to pay.
Right.
So it'd be the difference,
Yeah,
a
so,
small portion of it.
yeah, so I'd like to have that wrapped in there too, to get the full picture
Sure.
of what that, the true impact of that extra cost wages is really how we're incurring that, you know what I mean?
Yep, help the total cost.
I appreciate that. And again, I don't wanna, impact the people that are doing work in the town. I think it's valuable, but I think that this is taxpayer money that we need to be asking these questions for. Second question I have is the zeros for the food pantry.
The what?
The zeros for the food pantry. We're lucky that we don't have to cover that.
We
If
do help them with
these-
their building it, some of the, you know, we did the roof a couple of years ago, one
We
example.
did the parking lot this past year.
Yeah,
Yep. The running of it, right, is done by an outside group. If that group dissolved for some reason, are we required as a town to provide a food pantry?
Nope.
Okay, that question came up in a couple of things that I've had, and I was like, oh my gosh. Is that something that we
No,
need to?
we're only required by law to provide GA assistance, which we do.
Yeah,
That's the only thing. Food
Okay.
pantries are extra.
okay. Okay, just asking that question. Thank you.
Anything else?
Not right now.
Council Costo?
I don't want you to feel alone and being the bad guy, Zach. That is it's really hard to, debate salaries and wages of the wonderful staff that we have, in this town, but like Jeff said, in the end, it is the taxpayers' money. So I appreciate you looking for a little more detail, with this, because as a business owner myself, I know we're being proactive with, if we're paying more than surrounding towns, then the possibility of our staff leaving to go elsewhere is less than likely because we're ahead of the game. But yet, as a business owner, it's typically an employee will ask for a raise unless they've gone, like, I want to stay here, can I have more money? So the proactiveness, while commendable at the same time, is it necessary?
So just so you know, when I developed the budget, when we went through this, we look at all the aspects. We look at inflation. We look at the cost of surrounding towns. We look at what our employees do. We look at their evaluations. We look at all this stuff. And we don't do it proactively. We're not being proactive at all. We're just maintaining.
Mhm.
We're just doing this because the 2.9 or 3% cost of living is barely scraping by for them. And if we don't, I'm not gonna have enough, so we added a 50 cent, 75 cent, or $1 merit pay based on their extra work because they care so much about their jobs. If not, then I'm gonna be calling you to work the transfer station on Saturdays and Sundays. I'm gonna be asking for volunteer help to come out and plow the roads. Because they will leave, so it's not being proactive to be ahead of the game, we're just trying to maintain wages like everybody else is. We're just trying to be the same as everybody else, because the one minute we get behind, you'll see it.
So the other difference that you have to look at is you are a business owner and you are 100% correct in what you do. If I had a business in this town, I would be doing exactly what you do. This is a corporation, just like where I work. We don't ask for a raise. We get a cost of living every year unless the president says no. Based on, that's the cost of living. That's how the town operates. It's the same way as the corporation. So they have to. We've seen us losing people. We picked up 2 police officers from Sanford, which was huge to get us where we are. And yes, we need to be good stewards of the taxpayer money. Along with being good stewards of the taxpayer money is having proper people in the proper jobs, so we're not having issues and costing us money down the road. So if we had less experienced people and we mess up, we could really spend money in legal fees, which we've seen in the past couple of years in legal fees with people not experienced in what they're doing. So like I said, if I was sitting where you were, I agree 100%, but it's weird. It's a corporation in the fact of, I wouldn't expect the town clerk to come to you and say, I want $5 more an hour. It's not how municipalities run. It's based on what your budget is, what you think they are, performance values, and then the cost of living.
So one of the issues, let's hypothetically take, now you the clerk's office, what we identified, and as you know, the problem we ran into is trying to maintain staffing at $21 an hour when everybody else is paying 24 and 25 for assistant counter clerks. We were paying 21. Doesn't work, so I have to bump those positions up to maintain and keep. So Billy and Money both took a pay cut to come here. So great, fantastic, that we were able to entice them to come here for a pay cut because they hated where they worked. But if we don't, so point of the thing is, we'll certainly be glad to get that information, but we're not being proactive, we're just maintaining. And
Wait, I guess proactive wasn't the word, it was more like competitive, I guess, was probably the better word to be
Yeah.
used, but one of the missing pieces is, our benefit plans that we offer employees. A job, when you take a job, it's not just about the pay, it's also
Absolutely.
about the benefits, and some people will take a less paying job if the benefits are better.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you're looking at it from all aspects, yeah, I think it would, like, the information that Jeff asked to be provided, I think would absolutely be helpful. My other question is actually Jeff mentioned another thing. When we would try to pick apart the budget to find pennies here and pennies there, and I was always told that unless you find a certain dollar amount of deduction or to take off, that it's not gonna move the
Like a full percentage.
yeah, exactly. And I can't remember what that number is, but with that being said, is making the $167,000 of the cuts to the capital improvement really worth doing? Where it's only $167,000, because my concern is we always talk about, I don't want to say mistakes that were made in the past, but things that weren't paid attention to in the past. If we just, you know, I know it's just for 1 year, possibly. You know, don't put anything in, or don't put the $167,000 into the capital improvement reserves. Does that amount of money really make a difference? You know what I'm saying?
It makes a small amount of difference. You would see a small amount in the percent number of the increase in the budget. So if you asked me the question, you said, Mr. Manager, if we want, considering adding a lot of dollars for EMS this year to provide the best possible rescue ambulance service to get our patients to the hospital when they call 911, would I have made all those cuts? Absolutely not. I would not. I don't think, I am giving you an option. Remember, you have the option of putting this stuff back. You have the option of raising taxes. Now, I do know across the board, to answer some of your concerns, Councilor Minahan, and as well as all of you, talking to other managers, they have all said, this is the year for raise, taxes are going up. It just, we can't cut anymore. They're not doing what I'm doing. They're not. They're just, people are gonna start seeing a 6, 8, 10% increase across the board. I'm just trying to be as proactive as I can, to keep and maintain staff, keep services at a premium. Because you gotta remember, municipal government, like federal government, we're not in a money-making business. We're not a business. We're a nonprofit. So we can't make money. We provide a service. That's our job. That's all we're here for, is provide services to the public. That's what we do. That's our existence. So I'm just trying to cut. We were trying to cut to reduce it as least as we can, because now I have to show you the other piece. So. If that makes sense. If this was a normal budget year and there was nothing extraordinary sitting out there, I would not have made any of those cuts. Probably I would have made smaller cuts. But you're absolutely right. If you're asking me, I hope I didn't screw it all up. And then we have a problem. And I'm standing here in January next year going, oh God, I'm so sorry, councilors. I really ruined this. I have no idea. I can't predict the budget. This is looking at a snow globe for 18 months. So, I wish I could, no, I would like to put some of that money back. I agree, but I'm trying to be conservative. So the next part of this, is there any, Council Chair, did you have any questions?
I don't necessarily have the same concerns as Melissa and Jeff, but I do think having that breakout, I think will be helpful just in terms of like presenting the budget story. I firmly believe that I think like those things that you're doing in terms of valuing other towns is like part of what sets us apart in terms of like taking care and appreciating our employees, and I think that retention is incredibly important. I totally understand why it was not included, but I do think that we as a town need to move in a direction where we have a better communication system with our residents, in terms of the communications position. I get why we put it in there. I get why we pulled it out this year, given everything else, but I do think, especially if other neighboring towns are kind of stepping up there, I think we need to continue on that path and have clear, effective communication with our community.
One of the biggest challenges the other towns are talking about, Kennybunk, Berwick, Kittery, is that in today's electronic world, people don't read the newspaper, they don't go to our website. They're waiting to have the stuff pop up in front of them. We don't have anybody here to do that. And those towns who are doing it are seeing better results because their community is better informed. So this was my priority, that was my priority, put that position in budget, I talked to you about it. But I've got it, I think in the years coming, it's gonna come back. Because I have to give you the next part of the budget, the next proposal. So as you know, we've been looking at some solutions for enhanced emergency services.
Could we take a 3-minute break?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
go ahead, I'm sorry, yeah, go
I
ahead.
wanna hear all of this and I.
No,
Oh, I
go
was
ahead.
just, okay.
Oh, go ahead, everybody take a break, get a
Take
cookie.
bio break. You guys just
No,
need
no.
some cookies.
Take a break, get a cookie.
So we're gonna be.
Well, we're not
$2
we're not the bottom of the barrel.
Exactly, so we're $2 better than someone else, that float.
We're right now, we're better, yeah, we're better than some communities because we're getting them. And that's why I said, we're not proactive, we're maintaining.
Yeah.
Because they're going up. So I had a conversation the other day with the county administrator. And he said, you got 2 new cops, where'd you get them? He said, because I need deputy sheriffs. I said, we got them from Sanford. He said, oh, what are you starting pay at? So I told him, and he said, oh, you're higher than me. That's why you got them. So he said, now I gotta put up the county. He said, I'm gonna impact your taxes because I'm gonna put up the sheriff pay. So it's the fight, to fight.
The wheels on the bus go
Yeah,
round.
like who does it first?
So when you look at me and you ask me about the cuts of CIP, I'm just trying to save every penny I can, every penny I can. So, as you know, we have a contract to service ambulance company. Several years ago, they went up significantly on our contract, 200,000. They did not go up. We determined later that they did not pass that increase on to Rollinsford or to the town of York. Only us. As we continue to grow and go forward in the future, we need to look at services, how our services are delivered and rendered. We need to look at the bigger picture, the long-term solvency of how we deliver our EMS service to our citizens. This is critical because this is about quality of service, not cost of service. Unfortunately, we have to look at that we can't replace that the only interaction some citizens may have is when they call the ambulance, and if it's not a good interaction, that's not positive for us. When, you know, people, I know they hate paying taxes, but when they call 911 for an ambulance, they want the best of services to come and help them. And I'm not saying that that hasn't been the issue, and I'm not saying it has been the issue. Going forward down the road, fire-based EMS has been, since the 70s, has been where EMS ended up because of the tie-in to emergency services. Years ago, we had an ambulance here up until 2013, when they needed $90,000 to be solvent, keep going, and the town did away with it. 10 years later, we're sitting here going, did we make the best option? There are some things that the chief will show you, but we feel at this time, at this place, making a proposal to hire staff and emergency medical services ambulance through our fire department is the right time for 100 positive reasons. It is gonna be costly to the taxpayers. Other communities have done this. A lot of other communities are still doing it. Right now, there are 12 other communities that did it last year or are doing it this year.
We have in some step of the process.
And that's gonna keep growing because private ambulance services are having a not solvent and having a hard time to be productive and run a business. I think with the changes coming, whether we do this year, whether we do it next year or the year after, this has to be done. We're gonna be faced, and it's just a matter of when do we pull that Band-Aid off. So with that said, the chief has got a PowerPoint. I'm gonna let him go through and do his, and we'll present this to you.
Great, thank you.
He has the coolest clicker.
I do have the coolest clicker.
Get excited about
When
it.
it works, it's cool. All right, so to Tim's point, we're gonna cut right to the chase. Here, we're proposing to start providing emergency ambulance service here in town under the fire department, starting July 1st of 2026. So basically a year and 8 months from now. As Tim alluded to, ambulance services around the country and especially here in Maine are struggling. We just had the discussion about the difference between government and business. Well, most of these ambulance services, whether they are private, for-profit corporations or nonprofit, entities, they do need to run like a business. And right now, that business model is not working. It's not working in the long term. And the nationwide, and especially Maine being so rural, the statewide trend is those services are just declining and dropping off and being absorbed by the municipality. Kind of at the same time, it's no secret that volunteer fire departments struggle. We have been tremendously lucky here. We have a really good crew. We're actually full right now with manpower. But, you know, we're still starting to see some of the cracks, some of the early signs of fatigue there where call volumes are rising and people are getting older and we're starting to see trouble down the road, right? So, you know, to that point, we believe a fire-based EMS model is the sustainable long-term solution for the efficient delivery. There's obviously synergies there. We work hand in hand together every single day. And if we have cross-trained personnel, we can maybe mitigate not only the EMS issue, but the kind of the looming firefighting issue as well. We're definitely not alone in this fight. This was about a 30-second Google search of EMS crisis news stories, and they're all over the place. They're on almost weekly at this point. Different ambulance and fire department issues. And like I said, certainly not specific to South Berwick. So what's actually happening in EMS? Well, you know, it's kind of the iceberg. What we see are all these departments struggling, right? And they're having trouble recruiting help. They're having trouble, you know, making money, and they're basically going out of business because of that. And the real reason is a few specific issues. One is, just like everything else, the cost has gone way up, right? So their expenses are through the roof. Ambulance companies rely on billing revenue to stay afloat. So that's revenue that we pay as the town to subsidize it, and then what they bill the patients when they're transported. Those rates, particularly the federal and state funded, you know, insurance plans, have been stagnant and in some cases decreasing. And if they're not, they're taking longer to get paid out than they used to. And they're not keeping up with the actual cost of providing the service. And that's why we saw a basically 200% increase in our annual rate 2 years ago, because that's the realistic, you know, problem here. And they're suffering from a labor shortage. They just can't pay the compensation and benefits that are required to retain, you know, really the best help in that space. So it really begs the question, you know, is it a healthcare business or is EMS an essential service? And I think the big takeaway here is we need to change the way we think of it. It's a mind shift change that this is really an essential service, just like police and fire. We all kind of operate in the same sandbox in there. So by the numbers, you'll see almost 75%, actually almost exactly 75% of ambulance providers or EMS providers in the state are municipal. The vast majority of those are fire-based EMS systems. 13% would be actually North Berwick Rescue is an example of that, where they're a municipally funded but separately operated department. So that would certainly be an option. I don't think it's as efficient as having cross-trained people there. The other big takeaway here is that for every call that they go out on, and this is per the main EMS Blue Ribbon study in 2022, the cost to go on that call is $1,300, and their average reimbursement on that is just under $500. So every single time they leave the station, they're operating at over an $800 deficit every single day. So then it becomes more clear, well, no wonder they're dropping like flies, because nobody can sustain a business like that. Like the police and fire service, the cost driver is the cost of readiness, right? It's the cost of having 2 people in an ambulance in a station 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, ready to go. And that averages out to about $900,000 a year per ambulance. And then as private and nonprofit services continue to decline, you know, towns are picking up the slack, they're being forced to. And as Tim had mentioned earlier, and I got this from one of a consultant report up in Rockport, Maine, that in 2024, Maine EMS said they had 12 communities that were in some stage of the process of transitioning from private to fire-based EMS. Questions there?
Well, I think good to add though is it's not just locally, like our town and surrounding areas. It's not just the state of Maine. It's a nationwide issue. I just saw in the news this weekend that New Hampshire, right next door, just in one day, 6 fire departments were looking to doing this transition. So
yeah, they actually went live on that. So that is those departments are in the same mutual aid district that we're in.
Yeah,
So I've been in on some of those meetings and I've really tried to pay attention to that whole scenario just because of what's going on here. And yeah, that is a scenario where a private provider said, you know, we can't do it anymore.
Mhm.
And the towns are picking up the slack. So.
so
On the
you're
fire
not
department-
making this up.
I am not making this up. So on the fire department side, you know, today we're in pretty good shape, but the service has changed, right? Right now, our department has 36 members, and of them, 63% of them are over 40, myself included. And 37% of them are over 50, and I've got, of my top 10 responders, 6 of them are over 60, one being over 70. So we're not getting any younger. Calls are up, that's kind of obvious. We're doing a whole lot more than fires. I mean, actual firefighting's a small part of what we do. Most of the stuff we're doing now is rescue and public service and car accidents and those sorts of things. And it's more time commitment, which is really what's straining people in that middle age, because they have kids and families and concerts and everything else. They just don't have the time to give like they used to. So here's kind of to highlight that point, and here's the fire department from 1982. These guys did about 100 calls a year, 120 calls in a good year. Most of them were in their 20s and 30s, maybe 40. They lived right in the downtown because it was highly competitive to get out the door on a truck. They worked in the downtown at the shoe shop or P. Gagnon's or any of the other places. And they were allowed to respond to calls. And there was really no certifications. They just showed up, did their thing, and left. And there were, you know, sons, fathers, grandfathers, you know, just generational members there. Contrast that with today, we're up 450, 500 calls a year. We'll probably go over 500 this year. Most of our most active guys are either older, who are retired and have the spare time, or they're young and they're usually kids in their early 20s and they live at home. They almost all live outside of the downtown, which has increased our response time because now they're driving from further out. And they almost all work out of town. And of course, there's hundreds and hundreds of hours of training and certifications required just to put somebody in a building. And then really to speak to the overall housing issue in town, you know, these young guys, they're great when we have them, but as soon as they leave mom and dad's house, they're not living in Southburg, right? Someone 22 years old isn't gonna live here, so. So the sustainable solution, transfer from the contracted EMS service to a fire-based EMS service. And this kind of shows where we are now, kind of like we had recapped. We have a contract ambulance. They're supposed to provide us one ambulance 24/7. And we're, you know, willing and able to fill in when they have gaps. That's become more frequent. And on the fire side, I'm the only full-time employee, and we have a real dedicated group of about 35 on-call guys who turn out. So to get there, I'm proposing we purchase 2 ambulances. We order one new one and we buy one used one. Ambulances are like fire trucks. They take time to come in. So if we were to order one, you know, July 1st, we'd probably see it in 18 months. And you need 2 because if one's down, then you'd have a spare. I'm proposing we hire full-time personnel, 4 paramedic firefighters and 4 EMT firefighters. That gives you, basically for 24-hour coverage, you need 4 people. So 4 shifts. So that's 2 people per shift, 24/7. Of course, there's training involved. We're working on that now, but there'll be some of that stuff that we need to do in the future. And some minor changes to the facility so that the rescue squad is in our building, but they're a completely separate occupancy. So this is literally blowing out the wall between the 2 truck bays and modifying some offices and making it more user-friendly for both of us. And when we do all that, we come out the other side. We are a combined fire and rescue department. We have full-time people 24/7. They're trained as firefighters and as medical personnel. So in the event that something does happen with the volunteers or the call guys, we have firefighters there. They're getting there faster because they're at the station. But they're mainly focused on medical, which is the majority of the calls. Backed up by the fire department as needed, and then vice versa. And then the ultimate goal here, right, is the unified response, and it's just one team. We're one department. We're not fire or rescue. And that's really the driver to the facility changes is the only way this works is if it is one station. Questions on that?
Chief, you just mentioned something earlier about North Berwick. What is North Berwick doing? What is their system?
So North Berwick is a municipal ambulance, but they are a separate department. So they
Okay.
have medical people 24/7, paid for by the town, but they're not part of the fire.
It's just completely separate from fire. That's
So they're in kind of an opposite situation where they have the full medical coverage and sometimes have challenges on the fire side. But they can't cross because they're different,
got it. Okay,
different disciplines.
thank you.
Doesn't make any sense. Financial wise, it doesn't make any sense to own for the town to own two groups.
Correct.
To me, it doesn't make financial sense.
Nobody's doing that.
No, it doesn't make sense.
The only ones you really see out there are the ones that were, when they established ambulance companies way back in the day. And that's just the way they were set up and they've never changed it. That's really the only ones you see like that.
Can you speak a little bit to, increased like cohesion when you're on site and the importance of having people that work well together and
Sure.
how much better that is than, you know, having somebody come in, maybe you've never even seen these EMS.
Sure,
before.
and that's really one of the reasons why I'm, pretty insistent that we hire full-time members, because most of the non-municipal EMS companies are running with per diem or part-time staff, and it can really be a revolving door. And when you talk about, employees jumping gigs for 50 cents or $1 an hour, that's pretty common in that arena. And that's where you end up with staffing gaps because, so-and-so works full-time somewhere, got offered an overtime shift. So yeah, I'm not working in Suburban today. Because who would, right? So, to your point, that we see that now a little bit where we don't have a real tight bond with some of the providers because we just don't see them all that often. Versus if they're eating together, they're working together, they're training together, they're wearing the same uniform, same gear, same everything. We're one group.
You know everybody's strengths and weaknesses.
And it's no different than us
Compare
working with the
them.
police department, right? Like we know all the police officers by name, we know their families, know the kids, we work hand in hand, and this would be no different than that.
What are your thoughts on, you're proposing hiring, eight incremental people, correct?
Yes.
Of filling those positions, do you anticipate that being a challenge?
So it's a little tight out there. We'll have to be pretty aggressive, compensation wise. My ultimate goal would be we don't have any paramedics on our department right now. But my goal would be to get as many people of the other four, the non-paramedics, I'd like to take from in-house. I think that would help get us stepped off on the right foot. And then finding 4 paramedics, it could be a challenge, but I don't think it's insurmountable. The one thing we have going for us is it's really gonna be a good place to work. It, call wise, it's not super busy. So if you have someone kind of like the PD example, who's worked in Sanford for 5 years and is tired of doing 50 calls a shift, might not be a bad place to work to go out once or twice.
A little better stability with management too. Management's not all over the place depending on what they're making.
Yes,
It's not it's not a profit thing. Even a nonprofit's got to make profit.
for sure. Yeah, you guys stay solid.
Right, it's a little bit different working for the town.
Yes.
Right, so the draw we would have is we have, to what you spoke about, we offer benefits.
Yeah.
And it's hard for York Ambulance as a private entity to offer benefits or any other private ambulance.
They have very few full-time employees and that's really the reason, right? Because they're not paying insurance and the insurance they do offer is not going to compete with municipal insurance.
So they have per diem employees who pass through, take an extra shift every now and then just to get extra cash. They show up, they say, okay, you're assigned to South Berg for the day. Kid shows up, puts his gear or puts his stuff on his jacket on the ambulance. He has no idea where South Berg even is, who lives here. He would not know anything. And he doesn't have to care because he's not required to. He's required to collect a paid per diem paycheck. So when you call for a heart attack, he's only got one function, just show up, stick you in the ambulance, take you to the hospital. Our medics would wear our badges, wear our patches, be employed by our town, care about our community. That's the difference.
The boss is pretty high standards.
So what is, what's the requirement? So you're saying two ambulances, so if we have two ambulances, what are we now required to have? Like, I can't go and drive the darn thing, right?
So, yeah, so we would trade, so right now we have 36 people, we have 7 EMTs who are either EMTs today or in classes. And we're actually holding a class this fall, we have 12 more. We're gonna do that, so we'll have about 2/3 of the department will be certified. And everybody will be certified to drive the ambulance, because we made them take EVOC class for everything, just to even drive my truck.
Yeah.
So, they'll be able to fill in, they'll be able to pitch in, and having 2 trucks. So right now, York has 1 ambulance. I mean, they have 2 ambulances there, but they have 2 people, so they have 1 ambulance.
Okay.
So Dover came here, between here and Rollins for 50 times last year. So once a week, there's multiple calls, they're bringing someone else in because they just don't have the people to do it. Where we would have, I'm around, we have the administrators around, we have some of the firefighters around, so we'd be much more capable of, picking up those second runs or manpower calls or,
So you say EMT, that when if you're cross-trained, your firefighters are cross-trained as EMTs. Now, any of them can pop in and drive,
Exactly.
but can they zap me when I'm having a heart attack? What's the difference between the EMT and the paramedic?
So paramedic is, to boil it down to, nurse in the field.
Okay, so we can just have all EMTs running our.
No, so an EMTs are real basic, like you can do Band-Aids and use a defibrillator and whatever.
Okay.
No drugs, no IVs, no airway management.
Hang it, chief, hang it. So there's 3 levels. EMT is a basic, which is about 200 hours of medical school,
It's 12 weeks,
12 weeks.
12 weeks straight.
And then so they can put bandages on, stop the bleeding, drive the ambulance. And they can still give O2 or that not.
Yep.
Put on O2, they having a heart attack, do chest compressions, stuff like that. Then it's an advanced EMT, they call them, advanced EMT. They can do IVs, they can do some drugs, they can do your paddles in your chest. And that's about what, $600 program?
Yes.
Or more?
So that's what I was. When I was an EMT, I was an advanced EMT.
So you can do the drugs, some of the drugs, and then paramedic is the full boat, like Chief said, it's the nursing level. They can give all the cardiac drugs, they can do the airways, they can defibrillate, they can do everything a nurse can do in the ED, they can do in the back of the ambulance.
Okay, so.
And it's, the paramedic's about $2,000 training.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of like an associate's degree.
Alright, so for the package, I say package, but like the package, which would not be ideal, would be 2 ambulances, so if one broke down, you have the other.
Yeah.
And you have 1 EMT driver
Mhm.
/ driver and another EMT driver. At lowest cost, that would be what you got. That would be what could make this survive. Or do we have to have a paramedic?
You have to have.
You gotta have a paramedic, you gotta have a paramedic
In
on
order
the
to get
ambulance.
certified.
You can't send an ambulance.
That's the standard of care.
Yeah, you
Okay.
gotta have.
That's what I'm getting at, so
So your minimum is 1 paramedic, 1 EMT
And then
on a shift.
and then ideally it's that 2 of them, 2 ambulances, now you have backup for each other. so-
Right, and I don't know that that's necessary right now. I mean,
Yeah.
the call volume's not there.
Okay,
So
Our busiest times are during the day, during the week, during the day, which I'm there, our coordinator's there 2 or 3 days a week, so, and there's people in and out, so. I don't know that I'd staff the second ambulance scheduled, but
Sure.
by default, you'd have people there to cover it if
Yeah.
needed.
and I didn't mean to bring us off.
Oh, no, that's not topic.
There's no
So-
questions.
we would have to get licensed through Maine EMS. We'd have to get a municipal license to be licensed at a certain level. So the chief would get us we'd apply for the paramedic level. It means we'd have to provide a paramedic 24 hours a day. Well, but where the big difference shows up is on that second call that comes in after the first rig is left. Right now, we're waiting for Dover to come 50 times a year or somebody else. Right now, on that second call, we're allowed to run 2 basic EMTs because it's just it's a backup call.
Right.
So then that means the chief and another firefighter EMT could jump in the second ambulance and go to that call, still provide basic life support and services, put them in the back of the ambulance, head for Wentworth Douglas and called over and say intercept us.
Right.
So we increase our level of services as well by having this program all the way around. And then the other side of that, if they're all standing around and it's middle of daytime and there's a fire call and the chief needs them to, the chief can make the decision, you guys bring the fire truck instead of the ambulance and we're going. and now we get the fire truck out the door ASAP.
Yep.
So it's a multifaceted program that would do that. Go ahead, Chief.
Thank you.
So this is kind of the vision slide would be to unify the departments, obviously, make it more efficient. We get the cross training, that's in progress. We have the class coming this fall and some of the other advanced training. With the staff department now, we're out the door faster. You know, to Tim's point, you know, even if they're in the ambulance, they are trained as firefighters. So if they get there first, and something's, you know, dire, they can do what they can do while the cavalry gets going. And at the end of the day, provide value, right? Because I certainly, as a resident and taxpayer, understand this is a very expensive undertaking and not something that we're gonna take lightly putting out to the people. But I do believe this is gonna be the best service that we can provide in town, for sure. So what's the timeline look like? We tamped it down a bit because we had originally talked about maybe starting in January, but we realized that it was probably too fast. So we pushed this out a little ways, but basically, you know, over the summer, we'd get the new truck ordered, we would get our licensing squared away, work on policies, which are actually partially in process. We'd hunt down a used ambulance and equipment and start advertising for hiring, with the thought that we would start the hiring process right after the first of the year, get through the holidays, start the hiring process, and with the idea that we would start people probably in May. So we're looking to go live July 1st, but obviously you can't walk into your first day of work and not know anything, you know, and expect it to go well. So we take them on like 2 months early, 2 months into this coming budget to get them up and ready to go when it's time to flip the
And
switch.
half of your staff should be staff already.
What's that?
Half of your staff should
I'm
be
hoping.
staff already, right? If it works to your plan, your EMTs should hopefully be from in-house, which would be very nice to help the paramedics.
Yes.
Yeah,
They're pretty
great
green.
plan.
They're pretty green on the medical side, so my plan for them would be, I'd probably work out with one, either Dover or one of the other busier services. Let's get those guys some ride time, get them some experience. And then once we start the medics in May, get them responding as a group along with your, you know. Cool, how much? So this is the topic, right? So to make this work, you need to look long-term, right? We're looking at the other side of the canyon, not the fall below. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, it's scary, right? And I put this one here, just so everyone's on the same page. Comprehensive plan, number one priority, public safety. Police, fire, and rescue. All right, so the status quo means just that. We do nothing. We keep the contracts, the fire department operates the way we spoke tonight about is roughly about 950,000, including CIP benefits, all that stuff. To take over the ambulance and start July 1st of next year, this year's budget is looking more like 1.26 million. With an undesignated layout for basically for the used ambulance and other equipment of about 400 grand. So your total there is about 1.6 million.
So I got a question on that,
Sure.
and I might be off. So the 948 is what we're paying right now. And that's included through the fire budget, right?
Yep, fire, the rescue stipend.
Yeah. But that doesn't include what we're paying the firefighters that go out on every single ambulance call because they're not fully staffed and they need someone to help lift, correct?
I mean, it's loosely factored into the payroll, but yes.
So we're saving, if we go to the 1.26. We're saving.
There should be
Those dollars on the
fewer
other side.
callouts. So we did 440 something calls last year, a quarter of those were rescue calls. That we don't have an ambulance for, which means a quarter of the time, 100 times, we went and assisted them.
And we were paying our
And
people
we were paying people.
on top of what we're paying them.
Correct.
Which can go back to selling to the public of. We are saving because we're not paying on top of our contract that we shouldn't be paying anything.
Correct.
We're paying for 125 calls.
Correct.
At how many hours? You know,
Average ambulance call about an hour, so we pay an hour minimum. for a fire call.
Sure.
And most of them are under an hour.
And how many people typically are,
Depends on what they're looking for, anywhere from 2 to 4. You know, like a cardiac arrest might be more, but usually 2 to 4.
So,
It adds up fast. It's that piece that no one looks at. It adds up fast.
It does.
We're using our people for a contract that we shouldn't be using our people for.
That would be a cost saving.
So I just wanna make sure I understand that point fully, so. Chief, you said 400-ish calls a year, but like a quarter of them, and then these aren't the right numbers, but like a quarter of them were ones where. York ambulance wasn't there to go on the call, so we went instead.
No,
I
so
just wanna make-
that's, it's not that granular. That
Okay.
is times that we were requested for the call nature was a medical in nature. So it
Okay.
could be legitimate. It could be a large person, they need uplifting, could be a cardiac arrest. I mean, there are, you know, legitimate uses where we go and we respond and we help. The ambulance crew, and that probably wouldn't change all that much, right? Because 2 people are 2 people, whether they're firefighters or not. But there are, to your point, times where maybe they're running with one person,
Mhm.
maybe they're running whatever, maybe they. Yes,
Well, even if we have them on staff for the 1.26, we're already paying them to be there versus the 948, we're not paying them to be there. Now we're paying them.
Correct.
So no matter how you look at it, we're paying more in labor with a contract than we would be if we owned it.
that is correct.
I mean, that's short and simple.
so could you come up with like an estimate of what that dollar figure is and have that included next to it? Or is that,
I can, I
Genuine.
don't,
That'd be pretty hard.
it's
Okay.
tough.
That'd be tons of hours of research trying to
yeah,
go back. and-
let's not get that crazy. Yeah, it's not worth it.
I'm just looking for some points to sell.
Right.
Yeah, but I think we need to be able to explain that, like, this exact point,
Yeah.
because, like, I'm clearly struggling to like put together the sentences, because I know what you're saying, like, I'm following the math, but I just, from like a storytelling standpoint, in terms of presenting the budget, this whole piece of like, we're spending 900, under status quo, we're spending $950,000, then we have this whole story of like, these are the calls and what portion of the time or percentage of calls or whatever is fire going to do the same thing that we're paying
Right.
York ambulance to do already.
What's the average unit or call-in rate there per hour?
So coming up, yeah, they'd be 21, 22 bucks an hour,
$100 a call,
basically. And if they take a truck, it's wear and tear on the vehicle.
and the risk of them getting hurt and then they paying workers' comp.
Versus if it's a call that legitimately you need 3 people for,
Right.
I can just go hop in the ambulance.
I think that, I think.
I understand where you're going.
Just something to
I'm trying to
quantify.
figure out the best way to quantify.
Yeah, I mean, cause John, when you mentioned that is what clicked in my head, is like, what the hell what, why? You know what I mean?
Because there is,
Like, okay.
there is a category there of, there's only one person working next
Yeah.
door and we're providing a driver.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's, you know, I don't have a super great tally on that. But Rollinsford does, because so the difference in New Hampshire, you have to have 2 licenses to go to a call. In Maine, you don't. So they know darn well how many times they have a shift that's not covered, and it's
Right.
20 days so far.
So there's multiple versions of this, right? So it could be that if the call comes in, it's a certain level of service. They send the ambulance and the chief, by policy, sends the fire department to assist. Heart attack would be an example. So they have bleeding, okay? But then there are lots of times in other scenarios, they don't have a driver. And we finally stopped them from paging out the whole fire department and having everybody come to the station, paying everybody an hour.
Right.
And saying, 4 or 5 people, specifically call. And we have on numerous occasions met with York Ambulance and said, stop calling us out unnecessarily. So what was happening in a reality is they had put people on who didn't like the lift. So as soon as the medical call went out for John James with a bum knee, which should be just the ambulance, they were toning the fire department to go, and Nick and myself finally got involved and to stop that. That's costing us lots of money. So now we specify what type of call it is, when they're dispatching it, and what are they looking for? Are they looking for lifting help? Well, that's 2 guys real quick and the Explorer to go over it. Or are they looking for hands-on because it's a major medical issue, so forth. All that would be so in theory, if you look at it this way, the way you're talking about. Not only are we paying for the ambulance contract, we're double dipping, because now we're paying for a second, we're assisting that service. Really, they should be paying us back for that service sometime, we're not, so I have to pay for the firefighters. And I have to pay for the ambulance contract. So now I'm paying twice for this.
If you had 100 calls and 3 people went at $21 an hour, with taxes would be roughly $7,000.
I think if.
I think it's a
Any
fair-
sort of rough and dirty little data that we could show would be, at least to say, hey, this is happening, that would be very.
Yes, yeah.
This is great, honestly, this is
Yeah.
amazing, honestly,
I tried to boil it down to make it as basic as I could, looking too in the weeds.
She's done a great job, worked a lot of hours, we worked a lot of hours on this.
Question on this one?
That's including, with the benefits and all that stuff, that's
Yeah.
including all of the extra stuff that we pay the state and all the other, like. The hidden stuff that I consider, right, it's everything, okay.
So one of the things I wanna bring up, not, it'll show up here in a bit. So I called around to a couple towns that have done this already. North Berwick, when they went full time, cause they did their staff a couple of years. Their budget that year, their budget increase was 16%, and they said it passed with very few questions at all. People were ecstatic to have it, cause there were times when it got paged with nobody responding. And then the other one, which is not a good comparison, was Town of Falmouth, but they put on a lot more people than we're talking here, they put on 12 instead of 8. Their budget went up 21%, of course, Falmouth can afford it, and again, but it was logistics of how they presented, they said it passed almost unanimously, town meeting. People support having their own ambulance.
A lot of people were upset when they did away with South Florida Rescue. A lot of people, there's a lot went into creating that, and there was a lot of pride in that. A lot of people in this town are still sideways about losing South Florida Rescue. I think
It's
you get a
just
lot
not
of
the same
support.
in Lee's town, there's nothing you can.
And there's something to you, putting in a call and having South Berwick show up with people that you know and faces that you're familiar with and people that know you, and you can't quantify that, but that makes a difference.
That is.
Why they're upset about losing it.
Yeah.
You know the guy that's taking care of your daughter. and your kid.
And they know you and they're gonna do their damnedest to make sure they're,
So, question.
Sure.
and I might have missed this. So right now, our subcontracted ambulatory service, we pay them a contracted amount. They transport a citizen to the hospital and then they turn around and they bill that citizen for the transport.
And all the equipment used.
What happens through a municipal ambulatory service? Do we still bill our citizens
Yes,
if they're transported?
yes.
So one of
I mean,
the,
we could not, but it'd be excused.
No, we take over the billing and we outsource the billing agency for like 5%. They take 5% of the take. And then we bill the patients. I think that's on a slide you have coming.
Yes.
oh, sorry.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Okay, go ahead, Chief.
Alright, so to kind of break down the startup costs here, we have a used ambulance, with equipment. Honestly, the equipment costs more than the used ambulance does, but, there's that. There's the medical equipment for the new ambulance we're gonna order. That includes supplies, right? Band-Aids and all the other stuff. I use Band-Aids as a joke. It's a lot more than that. New hire costs, we're gonna put 8 people on, that's 8 sets of turnout gear, 8 things of uniforms, medical exams, physical exams, I mean, that's the whole deal there. And I put in a rainy day fund, thinking, if we're gonna go to the taxpayers for this big a chunk of money, I don't wanna go back. If something comes up, so I put in a 5% contingency for that. And that would all come out of the undesignated fund for $407,000. In addition to that, the building modifications, after Tim and I spoke last week, we decided we could move that over to the building CIP fund. I believe that's there presently. So that would not be a net add, but the fire CIP would need to increase by 110,000, which would get you to 250,000 for the new ambulance. So we would lease that just like we do fire trucks, 5-year lease. Ambulance life cycles are shorter than fire trucks because they run a lot more. I mean, our rescue calls are usually 3 to 1, so you're about 10 years on an ambulance, where we're 20-25 on a fire truck. So With two, I'd like, ideally, we just get on a 5-year kind of plan where we're replacing one every 5 years. People doing what they're supposed to do.
And we may have a good lead on a good used one close by, but we're waiting for confirmation.
Yes,
Just a question, so for the building CIP, the 24,000 and the fire CIP, that's in addition to the 407,000?
correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's the like 1.2 on that previous slide, there's like the 1.2 million.
Yep.
It's like operating budget, I guess you could say,
Mhm.
then the undesignated fund to stand up the cost, and then there's another one though.
Nope, the
Another-
CIP is in the 1.2.
Oh, the CIP is in the one too,
Yeah.
okay, thank you,
Sorry, I should have clarified that.
all good.
Is there a huge jump in liability insurance for us? I mean, not any more than like,
I don't think so, because so we're doing the non-transport license now, and when we looked at the insurance requirements, it was similar to what we already had.
Oh.
So I think we're covered there. There might be more, something we want to look into. Of
It would be when,
course, 2 additional vehicles and.
well, it's more for the vehicles than
Right.
anything. Liability insurance we already have, so it would come in more for the value. In reality, if I remember right, it was it'd be about $5,000. I don't know what it would be today. It was $5,000 for 2 ambulances. In another town I worked in, and that was, replacement cost for the ambulances that they got wrecked. That was the biggest cost.
So then this is the operating side, so this is what the 1.2 looks like. We're salaries and wages. That's me, that's the part-time EMS director, the call firefighter stay the same. I left the call firefighter pay the same, the rate about the same. I suspect that will drop in coming years, but we'll have to kind of play that by ear. It's kind of one of those unknowns, so I didn't want to drop it too much. And then the department operations, really not a huge change from where we are today. Since we're not coming in until next July, we have the full year of the York ambulance contract, that's in here. Our CIP and then the benefits is the 125.9, gets you 1.2 million. Try to think of everything. Questions on that?
We don't have money for batteries, we spent it.
If I killed it, sorry. You're right.
It's fine.
All right, so this is the kind of where everything comes together. This is where I really want my planner. Oh, I got it to work. Cool. So the orange line or the top line there, the status quo, this is what it looks like if we do nothing. So if we just keep running the way we're running. So you can see obviously for the last 2 years they're the same. This year would be less. But probably next year, I'm forecasting that I'm gonna be coming to you for at least one person on duty at the station. And that, again, is to combat that losing some of the older folks, particularly for drivers. So that's factored in there. And then, of course, the increases in the ambulance contract are in there. That's kind of the whole nut there. The red is the fire budget. So again, it's run the same. Then it goes up. Of course, next budget will have the full 12 months of 8 full-time people, so that obviously increases significantly, but it doesn't increase terribly from there. It just kind of moves along. The green on the bottom would be the incoming ambulance billing. This is a pretty conservative number because it only includes South Berwick. So right now, York Ambulance serves Rollinsford. We have not had any discussions with Rollinsford. So I ran everything as if we were doing it alone and we're not doing it for Rollinsford.
I have had outside of Rollinsford, I have had another community ask us that if we stood this up, they would be willing to contract with us. Cover their needs. So there's potential for us to walk out our services. Generate revenue.
In that scenario, if we were to work with another town and say, hey, we'll provide a service for you, does that mean we would need more guys, hire more people?
So specifically to Rollinsford, no, because it's really what they're doing today. Other communities, we'd have to look at what their call volumes like.
Case by case. basis.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you looked at Elliott, because east side of Elliott or south side of Elliott is so far down in Elliott, almost to Kittery.
yeah.
it would be a long run from here.
Correct, yeah. So you see, if you follow the line, and then, so the blue line is kind of the net, so that's the fire budget minus the ambulance billing revenue, kind of shows us where we're at, and you see even, you know, it's a better looking picture when we're offsetting. This is never gonna be a money-making venture, but at least we can offset some of those costs.
It's not about making money, you're providing a better service to everybody in
Correct,
town.
yeah.
It's just a cherry on top to offset costs.
And you see the do nothing line and the net and the line kind of cross each other there mid-budget next year. So that's when we start seeing that we're coming out ahead. So this is the canyon, this is the other side. Questions on it? How do we compare to the area? So this is a little hard because I forecasted fiscal 27's fire budget, because that's the real look, right? 12 months of full time. So these are area budgets adjusted up, I figured like 3%, just to give us kind of a baseline. I had to have something to go by. And we come in right around the average, a hair below. Of note here though, Kittery, Berwick, and York, all contract ambulances, so they have no revenue to offset those expenses, or we'd have revenue to offset some of that.
So the bar, this SB, FD, your ambulance, that's like our current
That's
situation?
today, yeah.
Okay, and then the red bar in the middle is like
Yep,
this
the proposed,
situation. Okay.
correct, yep. Question there. And that's our bridge. You overcame. Moving forward.
Sketchy.
Yeah. Just some quick pros and cons. I mean, they're kind of self-explanatory at this point. We have direct control over the services. We have combined people, we're cross-trained, we have better response times, and there is some long-term cost savings versus keeping two separate departments going. The biggest con is this is not a moneymaker at all. You know, it's at best you offset some of the cost maker. There's a big startup cost. I'm fully aware of that. The operating expenses are going to be higher. And the struggles of the EMS world and the healthcare world in general, where there's uncertainty in reimbursements and Medicare, Medicaid. I mean, we're not immune to that, so that's going to be kind of an issue. And then initially in the first year and a half or so, there's some lag in the billing, right? So a call we do on July 1st, 2026, we're not going to get reimbursed for who knows, 30, 60, 90, or 20 days. I get conflicting info on that, so.
The operating expenses with the contracted EMS system, we're just gonna keep going up with York. I mean, it's not gonna go down, and York's gonna go up farther than we would on
They're
it.
gonna go out of business before.
Well,
And that's the real
Yeah.
concern, yeah.
let us, yeah, we'll,
Yeah, we can talk about that. No, I'm just, if you look at it, our contract with York Ambulance, since I've been sitting at this table, has done nothing but go up with no reason why, realistically.
well,
it's the
they're trying to stay.
Well, right, but not
But
with the
with
amount it's going
no increase in service.
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
we're getting nothing extra, we're just paying a lot more.
Correct.
Mhm.
Then if you're really nerdy, you get the SWOT analysis, but the biggie here is the opportunities. There's, you know, staffing grants out there. Well, for now anyway. There's some EMS service money out there for community paramedicine, which is an up and coming thing. An area department is spearheading a regional community paramedicine program grant where they're out visiting people instead of bringing them to the hospital, they're proactively visiting. They've asked if we want to participate. I've given them a tentative yes. York Ambulance elected not to. They thought it was a takeover attempt. So, you know, but I see some opportunities there. So, increased public education. Right now, there's not a whole lot of public education. I see our EMS training following the lines of our fire prevention programs and other community outreach programs where we're doing first aid for the rec departments. We're doing first aid for whatever. We're doing all these different things that used to be when South Berwick Rescue was here that we lost, and bringing that back because they're here, they're ours, and we're paying them. So it's going to work.
I know they're hard to find in community and people.
It is amazing how hard it is to find community first aid and CPR classes.
Yes, it's a
And-
struggle every year.
And then there's revenue opportunities. Again, we haven't engaged officially with any other communities, but there's certainly some opportunity there. that to offset that, make that revenue line even higher. I just was trying to be conservative there. You wanna show the video? Or we good?
Go ahead,
Show the video. This was, what was it, 2 Fridays ago?
2 Fridays ago.
Yeah, no sound. Yeah, no sound.
Is the volume on the TV turned up?
And I hit the volume.
It's probably didn't play on your computer, right?
Why is it still playing?
You have TV one.
He used to be an electronic tech guy.
Inside the lives of a special news center now. On the line.
The proposal would introduce a 6% assessment on non-municipal ambulance service providers starting in July of next year. The proposal would introduce a 6% assessment on non-municipal ambulance service providers starting in July of next year. The governor says the new revenue stream and estimate.
Insurance is not on the screen. I'm watching it, nobody else is.
$6 million would help fund increasing main care costs. She explained this new money flow plus a tax on pharmacies would allow the state to leverage additional federal support.
We take that new federal funding, turn around and invest much of it back into higher reimbursement rates for both those ambulances and pharmacies. So they're basically made whole for that cost to begin with.
But not all of those ambulance companies are on board. Chris Mitchell, the executive director of Delta Ambulance, worries this tax would negatively impact an industry he says is already struggling to survive.
COVID and a bunch of other factors really pushed us past the breaking point, and we need help.
Delta responds to 13 towns, and despite their best efforts to increase call volume with a yearly expense budget of about $8 million, they operate in the red. The Maine Ambulance Association recognizes these concerns statewide. In a statement, they wrote, taxing these small community-based providers, many of which already operate on razor-thin margins and not fairly reimbursing them under this program could exacerbate their financial instability. They're asking for the formation of an EMS oversight commission and for any state and federal revenue to exclusively support ambulance service providers who have to pay.
I believe that the benefits from that tax should only go back to non-municipal services. I feel it would be an unfair burden on nonprofits or private services to pay for a tax that's going to globally benefit the entire system.
State lawmakers will workshop the biennial budget before voting by the June 30th deadline. House Republicans have said they will not support a budget with tax increases. For Maine's Total Coverage, I'm Jamie Ashway.
So that was what, 2 Fridays ago?
Yeah, 2 Fridays ago. This isn't a proposed budget. As we know, the state has a Democratic legislature and Democratic Senate, correct?
Yep.
So Governor Mills is proposing this. So what this would mean for us is this would be a 6%. It's for private ambulance or ambulance companies that are not municipal. So that means that York Ambulance would incur a 6% tax increase. I can guarantee that would be passed on to the consumer, who is us, and the customer, who is the patient. On the other hand, if we turn that around, we become a municipal department. If that tax passed, we benefited from that tax. That would be revenue for us. So that's certainly one thing that we have to think about. I think as we move this forward, we know it is a cost to the community. We'll take that for a minute. I'll have the chief answer the question. So there's another part of this, is the quality of service from our contract. And we will talk with York Ambulance about our issues, but there are issues that exist, and you have to know that they exist today. This past Sunday, we had an issue of staffing. How many times this past Sunday, from 7 AM to 5 PM, we had no staffed ambulance in the town of South Berwick. Per the contract, it was not, the doors are locked, lights are off. And you were told what, chief? At what time?
8:30 in the morning
And you were told,
by email.
and what did they tell you for an ambulance service for the day?
Oh, well, we'll call Dover, we'll call automatic mutual aid.
And so you contacted Dover, and what did you find out from Dover?
They were not contracted for automatic mutual aid to Southborough.
And they do not have automatic mutual aid with Southborough or with York Ambulance. Point being is, we can't continue service this way. This is not acceptable. I will address the staffing issues. Myself and the chief and the assistant town manager will be meeting with York Ambulance. So going forward, what we're talking about is the long term. We have 3 years left in this contract. I guarantee when this contract is up, we'll see significant increases again and again. My greater concern is it's private ambulance service. It's not solving. We are costing them lots of money every year. For future best operations of our community, I know this is a tax increase, but I would recommend this to the council now. Because I would rather not call you up and say, the lights are off, the doors are closed and locked, and they're never coming back. Because then we're scrambling to save lives. Chief, anything you want to add additionally?
I think that's a very real concern. I think it's a very real concern between now and July 1st, 2026.
I know you said your biggest concern is that the costs just gonna keep on going up and up and up, but realistically, the biggest concern is that we're contracted with a company that can tell us to pound sand, we don't have anybody for you.
Yeah,
What are you gonna do about it?
So Sunday at noon time, if you called because one of your kids had been hurt, it could have taken up to 20 minutes to get an ambulance out of Dover. But the first person you would have saw is the firefighters from South Berwick, who are not licensed yet, would have still come to your house and provided first aid for your family. So if you pull out the bill last sheet you have, the top is the budget, as I've explained it to you previously. The bottom is adding an EMS fire setup to begin 7/1/2026. If you look at the numbers, we added in the increase for CIP fire startup. Increase in benefits fire startup is in the chart, and the increase in operating fire startup for an additional amount of taxpayers for $658,880. So the budget, the increase in the budget would be a 6.53% increase. So the budget would go from 3.71 to 6.53, or when you add in the town hall renovation payment, which we have to do, it would go from 4.92 to 7.75 for a total budget. If on the lower one, if you added $1 million out of the estimated undesignated, leaving $5,900,000 balance with the same numbers, the increase in the budget, it would go up to 5.54% is what you'd be asking the taxpayers to fund. Then when you add in the town hall renovation, the total overall cost would be 6.76% to stand up your own EMS service. When North Berwick did it, they did it with 16%, like I said, Falmouth was 21%. So I think this is a very realistic cost. We struggled hard to put these numbers together. I really think that either one of these two numbers, 6.53 and 7.75, or the 5.54, 6.76, is very much a livable cost for the service community would get. I do not have any kind of I do not have any kind of number that I could give you for the mill rate to go up or down right now. We need the school, we need the county. However, we have played with this, and you wanna,
Don't do it.
No, don't worry.
Don't.
it's not tragic, it's not,
Yeah.
so it's not. So let me tell you this, it's under 90-cent increase,
It's not, wait till we get done.
you know?
So what's the real life concern of York Ambulance catching wind of this and dumping us when they catch wind that we're trying to?
Well, we're not gonna post this till Thursday.
After our meeting with them.
We're meeting with them on Thursday and I'm gonna provide this to them. So my question, one of the things that I have to kind of gauge, try to find out is, and I guess the question I need to ask from you tonight as a council, is this out the window completely or is this on the table? Because if it's out the window completely, then Thursday's meeting with York Ambulance, I'm just gonna play nice and say, hey, you know, here's what we're like.
I'm all in, there's no choice.
I
The
think it would-
longevity of the town, there's no choice, I'm all in.
We're talking about a 2.8% difference.
Correct.
I think it would be irresponsible for us to not consider this year.
I just need to hear from the council, I guess.
Amen.
No. I mean, I lived here when the rescue squad was here. There's no comparison to having a familiarity with the people that show up to your house at one of the worst moments in your life. And I think that would go a long way for our community. Sorry, had a bad experience. I think that, sometimes our taxpayers will say our taxes go up, but we're not seeing any benefits from it. I think this would be a very good time where the taxes would go up and they would be seeing a lot of benefit for it, with the services that, the improved services, ambulatory services that they would be getting. So I am in high consideration of moving forward with this.
I think it's on the table. I would urge you not to slam the door on them too hard. I'm not all in on this at this point right now, but I am in for it 100%. The presentation, I love it. I think it makes sense. Totally on it. It's the timing right now. I don't like the timing. But yeah, I see. It's definitely, in my mind, definitely.
So the hard point about the timing, how would you like it if you called on Sunday because you needed him and the ambulance wasn't there? And that's what I'm looking at, because I'm not gonna look at anybody in this audience as a town member and say, I'm good with an ambulance service not being here. That's not gonna be on my conscience. And I agree with you, Jeff, it is not the time with taxes. I don't wanna pay more taxes. I don't even know if I'm gonna have a job next week. However, I cannot look at the people that voted for me and say, I'm good with the provider not providing. And this isn't the first time this has happened with them. Just the first time we're bringing it public.
No, I agree. I agree. I think it'll be a benefit. The concern that I have is while we're doing what's good for the people of the town, how many of them are not going to be able to afford to live here and need to sell their homes because they're on fixed incomes, because we're getting a tax rate that's getting too much of a pressure. That's what I'm concerned.
Yeah, can I answer your question? Okay, the answer should be zero.
I hope so, yeah.
And the reason is because we have a poverty abatement process. If people can't pay their taxes, they can come in and see me. And we will start going through the poverty abatement process, which is very much in place from the state of Maine. That allows you to abate people's taxes, they can't pay their taxes. For that exact reason. So if it's a tax, if it's because of South Berwick taxes. There's an option for them to get out. We can help them. They just need to come see us and we will put them through the poverty abatement. And ultimately, in the end, you're the ones who vote on the poverty abatement. There is a process, and I keep educating and telling the people, I told this to some of the other people last time. There's a process in place. We talked about, oh my God, we don't want people to lose their home. Absolutely right. But if you're losing your home because of your taxes, you need to come talk to us at town hall, because we have what processes that we can save you. If you're losing your home because you can't pay your mortgage or some other reason, that I can't really help with that. But if you're gonna say you're losing your home because of taxes, no, that's not a reality. We have a poverty abatement. I've used it 7 times in my career as a manager, and it's worked. So there is
That's what I want to hear, to be able to tell people that I'm here, you know. Because that's what I get freaking out when I hear about it.
Yeah, and I've had people come in my office, Council Minahan, who said, and I've told them, and they said, I'm scared because I can't pay my taxes. I said, don't be, because as long as I'm here, you're never gonna lose your house to the town of South Berwick. We're not in that business. We're in the business of helping the people stay in their home. And as long as we can, as long as it involves taxes, we will not take people's properties, and I commit to that to you tonight. And I commit to the citizens of that tonight and to the future while I'm here as your manager. We will not take people's homes. If you don't pay, and you don't come to us, and you don't offer that help, I can't help you. But 7 times in my career, I have helped people, and it did work. I had to get, the council had to abate the taxes, but we worked the program, and they were very thankful. I will never nor will the town of South Berwick, nor will the South Berwick Town Council kick anybody out of their homes. Let's make that clear. Not because of taxes. So I just want that seems to be avoided in the public, which I would use my public information officer to get out, but I got it in the.
Yeah, you're not getting that this year, so.
I got it in the budget, but no one's gonna lose their home here because of tax. There's a poverty abatement, and so far I've only had one citizen in the 3.5 years I've come here, come in and try to apply for it. And then I found out, there were other substantial reasons that person didn't meet the criteria. So when this video goes viral, I want people, it goes up on the website. I want people to realize we have a process in place to protect taxpayers. And you should be telling them that out there as well. If they're having a problem paying their taxes, come see the town manager. Come see Tim, we'll help them.
And quick question on that process. They come to you, they go through the application, then they come before the council for abatement. Does that have to happen in a public forum? Because that could, or can that happen?
So everything is, again, good question. Thank you for asking that. Everything is done in executive session and everything is done private.
Okay.
The person comes, meets with me, that's private. Then I send them to the GA person, Dawn. They would go through with all their financials, that's private. We assign a private number that is fictitious, that nobody can track. For that case, it's given to you in an envelope that's secured for that meeting only. You would review an executive session, you would come to a conclusion, you come out of executive session, you would make a motion to reference that number that we agree to abate number 1926783 for $3,200. That's it, that passes. That's how it goes. It comes back to me. All the envelopes are secured and kept to me. I draft a letter saying the council abated it, and that goes to the assessor, and we're done. So it's very much kept private. So
I appreciate that, because I think that could be if they had to stand up here in front of everybody and, that could be a barrier right there. I'm 100% on board with with this path forward. It was a couple of meetings ago where you talked about that 8-year-old that got his leg stuck in a snowblower. I don't know if the ambulance showed up or not for that. I don't think it was an ambulance. I know the fire department did.
Yeah, they were there.
They were there, right there. Like, if that happened this Sunday,
Right,
like,
fire department would have got his leg out, but
we would have had to wait for an ambulance to come.
And it's one thing to say call Dover, but Dover Fire does 7,000 calls a year with 3 ambulances. They don't have time to do
so I mean, we
our
have,
1,000 as well, right?
we have a very recent example of a young kid, freak accident, where if that happened this Sunday instead of a month ago, different story. And we can sell that. I'm 100% on board with that.
So in the meeting Thursday is not, it's not a negative meeting, it's a positive meeting. All the meetings are positive. It's a positive meeting to have upfront communications with York Ambulance to make sure, but before I go there, I need to know your direction. So at least if you're,
Yeah, I think it seems like there's consensus that,
I'm not asking for a vote tonight, I just need to know, is this a consideration to go further? That's it, that's what I'm looking for.
Yes.
Because that's what I will be honest and tell them. So Thursday night, please write down any questions you have or anything. You'll try to get the salary numbers, we should be able to get that to you.
Yep.
The police chief and the rec director will be here to talk about their numbers and we'll answer any other questions and then go from there.
Sorry, last question on the York ambulance. If we were to terminate the contract with 2 years left on it, is there some sort of fee potential?
That would be up to legal. I can't answer that, but I
didn't know.
or there'd
That-
be some financial ramification.
I don't know, that's
In
up
light
to
of what's
legal,
happened.
Maybe not, yeah, maybe not, I don't know. Yeah.
you know.
What,
Maybe they'd be happy.
And we're not here, I'm not here to, I wanna make sure people understand. York Ambulance has provided us a great service as long as they've been here, we're appreciative of that, we paid for that service. They're doing the best they can with what they have. Going forward, in years to come, in long-term years to come, financially, I think this makes more sense. The problem is, every year we wait, 12 other towns are gonna do it that year, then 12 other towns, and 12 other towns. And eventually, someday, when we go to stand this up, there will be a problem. We won't be able to get the paramedics, we won't be able to get the staffing. Or it's gonna be so cost ineffective then.
We've had enough problems on the block.
So to that point, of those 12 towns in process, 2 are in York County, one of which borders us. And one of those towns is looking at hiring like 12 paramedics. So you have a pretty shallow pool to begin with, and only getting shallower as these towns kind of
Yes.
expand out, so.
Do you have people that would potentially sign, I don't even know if you can do this in the municipalities, but sign some sort of commitment for us to get them the education to become a paramedic, like go from EMT to paramedic?
I know some towns have done it. I know the police department has a similar kind of thing with the academy costs and stuff. So you're not paying to train people just for them to leave.
Yeah.
That's something we'd have to look at, because that's certainly an option.
one, just, I think Melissa, you were talking about the kind of what is, and we've played this game before where, you know, if we add back in this additional cut, this thing that we've cut, how does that change our overall percentage? And we've kind of played around with like 900,000 versus $1 million, like
Exactly.
doesn't have changed the percentage a lot. I'm just like, I'm not proposing that we add these back in, but I think it would just be interesting information for the council to have of like what those scenarios are with the percentages. If we did the EMS and we didn't do the CIP cuts, for example, like how does that, I mean, we're talking about whatever, 7% if that bumps it up to like 8%, like I don't know, that's something I think we should consider.
Yep, I can run those numbers as well, add back in the CIP cuts.
Yeah, I would just be curious to kind of toggle with that one.
Absolutely.
And you realize, good point, but, and also there could be a subversion of that, right?
Exactly.
You could say, okay, let's add in this one, leave that one out.
Mhm.
But we wanna fund these two or fund them at a different percent, you know, you could fund them, say, add them all back in at this percent. Right, so
Yeah.
we'll do that. But I was honestly thinking, 10%, over 10%, I think would be a tough sell.
Yeah.
We're way under. You know, for the quality, for what we're talking, so you don't understand how much I was, when I communicated with you on Sunday, how stressed I was and how stressed he was. That's scary. That's scary stuff. And I know we're talking about it tonight. But when we're required to have, you know, we signed a contract saying that we would have ambulance service, right? And your son gets hurt and we don't have an ambulance. Now that's a liability question. Someone's gonna come and knock on my door, say, well, you had a contract. Yeah. We did all we could. But it wasn't good enough. It was my son's leg and that snowball. Liability is a double-edged sword, but saving someone's life because we don't have an ambulance is not. It's just, there's only one thing to look at. How many times have you said that Rollinsford is tracking?
20 days this year so far, they've run short out of 60.
Yeah, we're not even that far into the year yet.
And it's not that they're a bad ambulance company, they're suffering staffing issues. And so we'll meet with them to discuss, but I wanna be forthright and upfront with them and say, this is what we're looking at. And it's not because we hate you, it's not because we don't like you, it's not because you're providing bad service, it's because we're not fulfilling our contract needs as a community, folks. That's not good. We've gotta come to a better answer than that. That's all. That's all I have, Madam Chair, unless you did something else.
I do not have it.
Great, so Thursday we'll have the chief and Nikki here and we got through the entire budget this evening. We're just gonna dig into some additional departments and we can kind of discuss more of this kind of scenario analysis stuff. Thursday
Yep,
night.
and I'll do some more of the scenarios and get the wages,
Beautiful,
add the CIP back in, maybe in 2 different ways, give us some different things to look at.
great. Chief, thank you for the presentation, all the great information.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions or anything or questions? Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Is chief
Thank
better
you.
than the other one?
All good?
Yep.
Huh?
Right,
Chief
maternity
better than
bill.
the other one? Ruger